Good morning, everybody. Welcome to day 2 of Scholars Portal Days 2023, Refresh, Reframe, Renew. I have a few housekeeping notes before we get started. First of all, our session is being recorded today, and recordings will be shared with everyone who registered, as well as posted on YouTube, our Scholars Portal YouTube channel. We'll also be sharing the recordings from yesterday's session if you missed it. Yesterday was a great day. We had updates from Scholars Portal. We had some great lightning talks, and we also had a presentation in French with some more updates from Scholars Portal. The slides from both yesterday and today are available on Spot Docs, and I will actually put the link in the chat if you wanted to go and see those slides now and follow along. We also have abstracts for our lightning talk sessions that are going to be happening a little bit later today. Closed captions are available today using the closed caption button in your Zoom toolbar. Also in the Zoom toolbar, you can see the Q&A button. We ask that you use the Q&A module to ask any questions of the presenters. You can also go in there and see questions that other people have posed and give it a thumbs up if you also would like to hear the answer to that question. You can use the chat to talk to fellow attendees or to comment on the proceedings today. You can change the chat settings from chatting to everybody, which would go to all attendees, or chatting with just the hosts and panelists. So if you want to ask for tech support or if you need any help today, then you can change it to hosts and panelists, and one of us will get back to you and provide you with some help with Zoom. We do ask you to always be kind and respectful in your interactions today. And then if you are on Twitter, you can tweet about Scholars Portal Day. Our hashtags is hashtag SPDays23. Before we get started today, we also just want to acknowledge the land that we're on today. So the land on which Scholars Portal operates and upon which most of our Scholars Portal staff live and work for thousands of years has been the traditional land of the Huron-Wendat, the Seneca, and the Mississaugas of the Credit. Today, this meeting place is still the home to many Indigenous people from across Turtle Island, and we're grateful to have the opportunity to work on this land. We encourage you to reflect on the land that you're joining us from today. We know we have people joining us from a wide geographic region. If you would like, you can add your own land acknowledgement into the chat. We encourage you to do so at this time. And if you aren't sure about the land that you're on, we do have a resource on this slide, nativeland.ca. So I will give you all a moment to reflect on the land that you're on, to enter your land acknowledgement into the chat if you wish. I also wanted to acknowledge that today is Red Dress Day, the National Day of Awareness for Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls and Two-Spirited People. And so it's particularly important to reflect today on the legacy of colonialism in our institutions, on our lands, and our progress towards reconciliation. And thank you to everyone for who's adding their land acknowledgements into the chat. We really are a widely geographically dispersed group today. All right, so I'm now going to pass it over for the beginning of our agenda today to Catherine Davidson, who is the University Librarian at Ontario Tech University, as well as the chair of the OCUL Collaborative Futures Steering Committee, who is going to be moderating a panel for us this morning. So take it away, Catherine, and I will stop sharing my screen.
Great. Thank you, Sabina. Thanks for inviting me to moderate this morning's session. I'm coming to you from Ontario Tech in Oshawa, where we acknowledge the lands and peoples of the Mississaugas of Scugog Island First Nation. The lands we are situated on are covered under the Williams Treaties and the traditional territory of the Mississaugas, a branch of the Greater Anishinaabeg Nation, including Algonquin, Ojibwe, Odawa, and Potawatomi. Thanks, Sabina, for mentioning the significance of today, May 5th. I'm wearing red in honor of that as a symbol of my commitment to action in the elimination of gender-based violence. And I'd also like to mention this is followed next week on May 11th by Moose Hide Campaign Day in recognition of the impact of gender-based violence. And so that's what this little moose hide is in honor of. Sabina knows I look forward to Scholars Portal Day every year, and every year I'm so impressed by the incredible lineup of speakers and topics. This year's theme of refresh, reframe, and renew was captured throughout the day yesterday. I appreciated the Scholars Portal updates with snapshots that really showcase the remarkable accomplishments of the Scholars Portal staff, OCUL committee, and community members. I learned a lot from the lightning talks yesterday, and I've already shared links with colleagues here. I'd also like to say a heartfelt thank you to all the dedicated individuals working tirelessly behind the scenes to curate and deliver this exceptional content, which includes members of the SP planning team, OCUL SP chairs Lynn Service and Andrew Calgoni, past OCUL SP chair Karen Pion, OCUL staff Katrina Fortner and Annika Irvin Wards, and SP staff Ginsley Mondesir and Sabina Pagotto. So huge kudos and shout out to you all. I'm delighted to be moderating this morning's panel discussion on new partnerships, new perspectives, rethinking approaches to long-standing problems. And I'm looking forward to being inspired by our speakers and their approaches to addressing long-standing problems. So we have about 15 or 20 minutes for each speaker. And as Sabina mentioned, we will save questions to the very end, but you can type in your questions using the Q&A function. Not the chat, the Q&A function at any time. And I will start by sort of introducing each speaker. A speaker, they will speak, and then move on to the next one. So first up, I'm delighted to introduce Jeff Moon. The title of his presentation is Getting to Know CO, Compute Ontario's Role in the DRI Ecosystem. Jeff Moon is the Director of Data Strategy and Services at Compute Ontario. Prior to this, Jeff was Director of Research Data Management for the Alliance, which evolved from his work with Portage, a national library-based RDM network launched by the Canadian Association of Research Libraries in 2015. Before this, Jeff served as Data Librarian at Queen's University Libraries, as Academic Director of the Queen's Research Data Centre, and Manager of the Queen's Research Data Management Service. So, Jeff, over to you.
Thanks very much, Catherine. It's great to be here today, and I want to echo how much I enjoyed yesterday's session. So I'll share my screen and we'll get started. And if everybody can see, is it all good there?
Yes.
Right.
Yep.
Thank you. So hello and welcome to this introduction to Compute Ontario and its expanded role in the DRI ecosystem. And I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you here today. Bienvenue et merci pour l'opportunité de vous parler aujourd'hui. Let me start by acknowledging that I am speaking to you from Kingston, Ontario, which is situated on traditional Anishinaabe and Haudenosaunee territory. We are grateful to be able to live, learn, and play on these lands. In keeping with the theme of this year's Scholars Portal Day, Refresh, Reframe, and Renew, and more specifically with the title of the panel, New Partnerships, New Perspectives, Rethinking Approaches to Longstanding Problems, I thought I'd take a stab at solving a problem that many of you may have, and that is understanding what Compute Ontario is and what it does. I certainly didn't know before I joined them. So my apologies to some in the Ontario data community who may have seen a version of this presentation recently, but I think reinforcement can't hurt. If we can get the slides to go, we'll be good. There we go. Since June of 2022, I have had the privilege and pleasure of working with Compute Ontario, which is led by CEO Ranil Sanandara at McMaster University and supported by the rest of the Compute Ontario team shown here. Starting with the basics, everything Compute Ontario does is aimed to help researchers conduct research successfully. Compute Ontario does this by supporting digital research infrastructure, including advanced research computing, research data management, and research software. And this is a new mandate recently added to Compute Ontario's remit from the Ministry of Colleges and Universities, and it certainly makes us a player in the broader DRI ecosystem. Compute Ontario is funded by the Ministry of Colleges and Universities, or MCU, to bring together partners and stakeholders to coordinate provincial and federal investments and strategy for Ontario, DRI, and serves as a trusted source of unbiased strategic advice and leadership in the Ontario DRI space. Not surprisingly, there are a lot of partners and stakeholders in this ecosystem, and I'll provide a bit of a whirlwind overview of some of these here. Let's start with HPC for Health, which is a consortium of the Hospital for Sick Children in Toronto, as well as Princess Margaret Cancer Centre and the University Health Network, or UHN, that together share the HPC resources provided by HPC for Health. Using HPC for Health, each of these healthcare institutions can access their own fully private, cloud-based HPC through a centralized brain that monitors each institution's usage and expands and shrinks capacity based on demand. This shared cloud model allows institutions to take advantage of each other's excess resources, saving researchers from having to request additional resources for themselves. Continuing our focus on health-related partners, ICES is a not-for-profit research institute that supports cutting-edge studies on healthcare delivery and population outcomes using a range of demographic and health-related data. It's a secure data enclave, much like the Research Data Center Network run by Statistics Canada and institutions across the country. The Vector Institute for Artificial Intelligence is a health-focused, independent, not-for-profit dedicated to research in the field of artificial intelligence, machine and deep learning to generate more accurate health insights and predictions. Together, HPC for Health, ICES, and the Vector Institute support the Ontario Health Data Platform, or OHDP, a secure, regulatory compliant research computing environment for applying AI and machine learning techniques. Researchers are using OHDP to address pressing COVID-19 and pandemic-related challenges, such as those affecting long-term care residents. Moving closer to home here in Kingston, the Centre for Advanced Computing, CAC, at Queen's University helps fulfill the HPC needs of hundreds of Canadian research groups, comprising thousands of researchers working in a variety of fields. SharkNet is a consortium of 19 universities and colleges and runs one of the largest high-performance computing clusters in Canada, Graham, located at the University of Waterloo. SciNet is a consortium-led supercomputer at computer center at the University of Toronto, hosting Niagara, one of the fastest supercomputers in Canada, plus a range of other systems. It provides Canadian research with computational resources and expertise necessary to perform their research on scales not previously possible in Canada on a wide range of fields, including biomedical sciences, aerospace engineering, astrophysics, and climate science. Together, HPC for Health, CAC, SharkNet, and SciNet make up the Compute Ontario HPC Consortia, which we'll look at a bit more closely later in the presentation. SOCIP is an academic industry consortium founded in 2021 as a collaboration between Ontario's research-intensive post-secondary institutions and small and medium-sized enterprises across the province. SOCIP is driving the uptake of AI and data science solutions and enabling the development of a knowledge-based and innovative economy in Ontario by supporting technical skill development and delivering high-quality outcomes. And finally, Orion, which many of you are probably familiar with, is Ontario's provincial research and education network, spanning 6,000 kilometers and connecting over 1.7 million people in the research and education sector. Taking a very brief look at some impacts, Healthcare initiatives using HPC for health include Care for Rare Canada, a consortium of 20 Canadian clinical and research sites dedicated to helping children with rare genetic conditions, and the related Genomics 4RD, a pan-Canadian rare disease data repository and analysis platform designed to centralize and provide harmonized access to data from thousands of rare disease families to identify and connect rare diseases. HPC resources at CAC are helping revitalize Indigenous languages across Canada. The University of Windsor is using SharkNet resources to conduct computational chemistry research to design unnatural molecules to cure disease. SciNet resources support the Supercryogenic Dark Matter Search, or Super CDMS, a part of a collaborative international project to find the dark matter particle. And finally, SOCIP is being used by Seneca College to develop a scalable machine learning algorithm to categorize videos. Let's take a look at how Compute Ontario fits into this diverse DRI landscape. As already mentioned, Compute Ontario serves as a trusted source of unbiased strategic advice and leadership in the Ontario DRI space, which includes a lot of advocacy and communication among Ontario's HPC consortium members. So that's probably the core of what we do, is work with our HPC consortium members to ensure that they're able to operate effectively. In addition to that, Compute Ontario also coordinates funding submissions on behalf of the consortium. We have project involvement with all of the stakeholders shown on this slide, and then we work to coordinate special projects, broker knowledge and expertise, and promote best practices in DRI. We have alliance funding for two of our Compute Ontario HPC consortia, SharkNet and SciNet, and this is brokered through Compute Ontario according to the 60-40 funding split that ISED has put in place. We also have project involvement with the Alliance, and there are a number of projects that we're involved in and engaged in across the DRI ecosystem. Compute Ontario also maintains and nurtures national partnerships with other regional consortia and other national host sites. We represent Ontario's consortia federally. We engage in knowledge exchange and advocate for Ontario's DRI needs, including research data management. Compute Ontario is funded by the Ontario Ministry of Colleges and Universities, the Ministry of Health, and other ministries in Ontario, and as such has accountability to these ministries. Further advocacy and communication takes place between Compute Ontario and the Ontario Council on University Research, or OCUL, which underscores our close relationship with both researchers and post-secondary institutions in Ontario. So overall, Compute Ontario is a key focal point for DRI support in Ontario and within the broader regional and national DRI ecosystem. My role at Compute Ontario was created to address four main priorities: leadership and vision, relationship building, training and services, and representation. One of the new initiatives related to the addition of RDM to Compute Ontario's mandate was the creation of RDM-focused funding calls. Successful applicants to the second of these calls in 2022 are shown here. And it's interesting, but perhaps not surprising to note, that 4 out of 7 of these are directly related to training initiatives. And I think that's telling of the thirst for training in this space in the community. Continuing with the training theme, the long-standing Compute Ontario Summer School, which has been previously HPC focused, added 3 RDM focused sessions in 2022, shown here. 2023 is looming upon us, and the 2023 Summer School is coming up starting on June 12th. And we'll have 2 parallel streams covering a wide range of HPC research software and RDM topics, including, I'm happy to report, the 6 RDM sessions shown here. I would encourage you all to check out the rich array of non-RDM course offerings, which are open to all and brought to you by dedicated specialists at CAC, SciNet, and SharkNet. The summer school runs from Monday, June 12th to Wednesday, June 28th, but we've scheduled the RDM sessions right at the beginning. So mark your calendars for June 12th and June 13th if you're interested in attending those. And thanks go to the many RDM specialists who stepped up from Ontario and across Canada, including the Alliance, who have agreed to teach at the summer school this year. Turning to outreach, Compute Ontario has struck 2 new advisory committees. The Training Advisory Committee is dedicated to supporting and coordinating training efforts across the DR ecosystem in Ontario, but also outreach to the national and regional partners. And here are the folks that we've got on that committee, and we're grateful to have Elise Deegan from CAC serving as chair and Michelle Edwards from the University of Guelph serving as co-chair. We also have an RDM advisory committee that just started up, and it will guide Compute Ontario more specifically regarding support and coordination of RDM efforts for Ontario researchers. And we have yet to find a chair for that group. So if any of you are members of this committee and want to be the chair, please contact me, because some of you may be on the call today. I started with Compute Ontario with the goal of learning about high performance computing and how it interacts with RDM, and then reflecting this back to the community in a practical way. I think I've made some progress in this regard, thanks in no small part to all the patient people who have helped me in my journey thus far. So shout out to all of you who have put up with me asking you questions and asking more questions and so on. My understanding is still growing and evolving, not surprisingly. One theme I've noticed that might help us move things forward is the strong HPC focus on reproducibility. And while reproducibility is certainly important, I believe RDM best practices take a broader view, seeking to make data, metadata, and code fair, which is findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable, which all of you, I'm sure, are very familiar with, which, if done well, supports the goal of reproducibility. And certainly in my research, I've noted that there are a vast array of research workflows out there beyond HPC that would benefit from RDM best practices. And just as a case in point, I attended earlier this week a text and data mining colloquium at the University of Toronto, which was absolutely amazing. And I would encourage you all to look at the resources that have flowed out of that colloquium and consider joining the listserv that they've started that will delve into text and data mining in a more deeper way. So that added yet another workflow in my mind that I'm sure there are others, specific workflows that could be added here as well. And another thing I've noted is that regardless of the workflow, and frankly, regardless of whether or not high performance computing is needed to complete the associated research, good RDM practices are key. Our goal at Compute Ontario is to articulate and socialize RDM-friendly approaches to conducting research, whether HPC is involved or not. And Compute Ontario's role is to coordinate, collaborate, and communicate with partners and stakeholders to achieve this goal. And so with that, I will say questions, but I think we're leaving them toward the end. And I will pass the floor over to our Catherine, our host.
Thank you, Jeff. That was, I am always curious about Compute Ontario and the whole ecosystem, so that you did an amazing job of mapping that all out. And I do have a question, which I will save to the end. But thank you very much. And as Amy said, it's clear we do not have a monopoly on acronyms, do we? Okay. So thank you, Jeff. And now we're welcoming Andrea Mills. And I will just go through a quick bio for you, Andrea, and then turn it over to you. It's wonderful to have Andrea joining us. She is the Executive Director of Internet Archive Canada. Andrea joined the Internet Archive in the spring of 2006 and has since worked closely with GLAM institutions across Canada to manage digitization projects big and small. The Canadian collection is now more than 750,000 records. Andrea is responsible for coordinating Internet Archive efforts in Canada with a focus on building a Canadian digital library by and for Canadians. And her personal approach is centered on accessible reading formats and free, equitable access to public and government information for all. So thank you, Andrea.
All right, thank you. And let's see, it's the inevitable find that window that you want to share. Just give me one moment here. Shazam. Okay, I think there we are. So good morning, everyone. I'm very happy to be here to talk about Internet Archive, represent Internet Archive Canada here at Scholars Portal Days. I didn't give my presentation a fancy title, so I apologize. I apologize for that. But again, I'm very happy to be here. And we have a really long and fruitful relationship with Scholars Portal and the staff at OCUL and many of the OCUL institutions. So this is great. And I really can't think of a better theme under which to discuss the project that I'm going to talk about today, which is Democracy's Library Initiative, and really highlight our partnerships and collaborations that will be integral in tackling the long-standing challenge of government information. So as was mentioned, I am the Executive Director of Internet Archive Canada, and next week it will be my 17th year with the Internet Archive, which I can't believe. But I just wanted to sort of diverge briefly here to say that my first job ever was in my local public library. I worked in the reference section, filing government, reports, Hansard debates. So I can't seem to get away from government information. This has been a recurring theme in my career. So I'm happy, and it's inevitable that I'm back here once again. So I'm just going to quickly set the stage about Internet Archive Canada, and I'm going to use this great Apple II game that you should all check out on archive.org while I do that. Many people don't realize that the Internet Archive Canada has been a Canadian nonprofit since 2006. Our sister organization in the United States, very well known for the Wayback Machine and their efforts, but we've been working away here. I'm at Robarts Library, University of Toronto here this morning, where we started our pilot project for our books digitization program, which has now grown to be international. So 2004 and 5, this is where we were working through that program. And now that international group is digitizing often more than 3,000 books a day. So it all started here. Other things to know about Internet Archive Canada. So we now have a headquarters in Vancouver, which we've started to host and welcome events and conferences and things like that from our library community. A data center. That's been a main focus for us, for myself personally, for the last few years. So we now have a data center in Canada. We have digitization centers at University of Toronto, University of Alberta. I saw some Albertans on the call, so hello. And we have a staff of 30 working away. We have scribes, which is what we call our digitization machines at Hamilton Public Library, Trent, University of Victoria, Queen's, Vancouver Public Library, and Librarian Archives Canada will join later this year, which we're very excited about. And of course, we've worked with many libraries and GLAM organizations in digitization, web archiving through Archive It, and Community Webs program. So lots of Canadian activity. And we've worked with really hundreds of libraries and organizations across Canada, and this is just a subset. The logos would be microscopic if I put everyone on here. But as I said, many of OCUL institutions, and in particular related to this project, the OCUL government information community has been a really key collaborator. Many representatives through that group over the years, but they've been wonderful to work with. So as was sort of mentioned in the preamble by Catherine, the Canadian Libraries Collection now has over 750,000 records, most of them in the public domain, 176 million pages, and lots of views. So that's 615 million times that someone has clicked on an item and used it. We used to have a party and be like really excited when we hit 1,000 and 5,000, and now we're clocking towards 800,000, which is very exciting. The Canadian Government Publications Portal has been compiled since 2013. And really some of the first projects that we did when we were digitizing were government documents. So really it's been a recurring theme. And this portal collects the digitized and born digital information coming from Canadian sources. So a lot of this is digitized, some of it's digitized by other institutions and uploaded to the Internet Archive and aggregated together. And it's now over 70,000 items, 13 million pages, and 13 million views. So this set, what I'm sort of narrowing down on this, this government information set is a lot of publications published by the government, consultants' reports, pamphlets, statistical data, and even posters and stickers published by various levels of government. So it's really a really wide breadth. It has everything from farming, home economics, statistics, municipal plans, sheep husbandry, if that's something that you're interested in, and really a wide breadth of information about life in Canada. So it's grown to the point that it can satisfy machine learning, but also humanities research and general interest. I always like to put this slide up because I really continue to, this is another divergence, but really be obsessed with the design and content of government info in the 1970s and 80s. So it's worth reading for a good time. So here we are. The project that I'm going to focus on today is the Democracy's Library Initiative, which is a partnered project of the Internet Archive and Internet Archive Canada. And it's striving to bring a foundation of information for the open internet. So information that can be referenced and built on. The publications of government and all democratic governments at every level really are vast. There's a lot of investment that's been put into creating this information, but it's not always as available as they could be. So we are starting with the United States and Canada, but we have an eye to expand this project internationally. And the mission of this project is to help inform, empower all citizens by bringing improved public access to government information that's in the public domain. So as I said, these investments, in some cases are trillions of dollars in research in publications. Most of it is open. The United States is lucky that all of it is open, but it turns out the public can't easily access it. So we're aiming to make this information accessible, shareable, preserving it in a distributed fashion on the Filecoin network, as well as by the Internet Archive Canada, and our partner libraries. And the Filecoin Foundation for the Distributed Web has provided a grant to fund this first year of scoping activities and some infrastructure to, come to a plan in order to tackle this much larger problem. This will not be solved within the bounds of 1 year. And the Filecoin Foundation supports the creation and improvement of open source software, open protocols for decentralized data storage. So we want to make sure that this information is, lots of copies, keep stuff safe, and also a distributed retrieval network for long-term stability. So we were very lucky at the launch of Democracy's Library in October of 2022 to have Leslie Weir, Librarian and Archivist of Canada, join us. And she provided a lot of encouragement to those working on this project in attendance. And she sort of provided us a mantra that we've been using in the months since. Access is the key to understanding, and understanding is the underpinning of democracy. And she was referring to digitizing and making accessible the Library and Archives Canada collections. But if I roll back the clock to a year before the Democracy's Library project launched, Internet Archive and our partners already had government publications on our minds and on our agenda. So our close partner, University of Toronto, has embarked on a major digitization project that was conceived before Democracy's Library happened. And over the last 2 years, I think we're at about 27,000 texts have been digitized. 6 million pages have been added to Internet Archive from this government library's collection. So some stats. As I said, it's 27,000 publications, it's 15 terabytes of data, 7 million pages. And in terms of the scope, pretty easy. It's the entire 5th floor of Robarts Library. So that didn't need a collection team to decide. So we're about 18 months in. Of course, the first months are getting your bearings, and it's about 8 to 10 months to go. But I think another bonus of this project is we have really in-depth data on pages per foot, cost to digitize. This is really informing the wider project of trying to have a really comprehensive set of government info, making sure that we have everything. Again, prior to Democracy's Library, but that has carried through, we had already forged kind of a super group with other Canadian organizations with an eye to government information. Between LAC, Internet Archive Canada, CRKN, and U of T, we have really this large set of digitized government information in Canada. And so what we came together to discuss is how can we share and consider the access, preservation, and sort of metadata sharing, concepts in terms of discovery together to bring these siloed collections together. So the Democracy's Library initiative will really ensure there's robust pathways between these different repositories, help to make a shareable set for any institution or group who would like a copy of this information. And I think this slide here is from a presentation that we gave together at OLA in February. Here's a picture of the panel. It was really well attended, well received session where we sort of announced that through the University of Toronto Digitization Project, that at that time it was, I guess, just under 25,000 new federal and provincial records were going open on Internet Archive. And sort of the collected group there were also all in attendance. All of the organizations joined us at the Democracy's Library launch. So it's really sort of that Canadian, give us a shout out as preparatory work has come together and become a really important part of this ongoing initiative. I clipped out a slide from Claire Appavou's, who's the executive director of CRKN, from her slides, because I think it's really relevant here for our panel. We really want to work together, learn from each other, make the most of our resources. It's a very Canadian thing. We're taking collaboration very seriously, almost sort of aggressively, because I think we're only going to get to where we want to go if we work together. And in that session, Claire said, we're looking forward to developing workflows and learning from one another, both from successes and mistakes. But she said, knowledge sharing is just as important as sharing content, which I think is just very, very important. And I'm so pleased that that's how this group is working together. A few quick photos here. So many in this group will know the breadth and depth of government publications. So some of them are the wonderful debates of the House of Commons, all uniform. Those are great to process. These are a few pictures when Brewster Kale, the founder of the Internet Archive, came to visit us. We've worked with lots of ministries, departments, but many parts of the stacks have been kind of glossed over because of lots of reasons. Metadata, their pamphlets, non-uniform bindings, condition. But because of this mass project, we're really pushing through and just digitizing everything. So there's a lot of material that's coming forward that hasn't been digitized before, which is really, really wonderful. A few other updates. So through the fall and winter of last year, we met with and surveyed government information professionals and stakeholders. We had some events presented at conferences, and we have some more events and speaking engagements planned through the spring and fall. So including through that, we forged a working group, which have really been integral in assisting us in drafting some preliminary environmental scans and a roadmap early this year, but much revising to come. So we'll be working on that through the rest of this year. And there's two projects that I think will continue in parallel as we continue our work. So one is supporting the National Indigenous Knowledge and Language Alliance, which are taking the lead on transitioning to respectful terminology in metadata. So replacing outdated subject headings when referring to Indigenous people, which in terms of government information is very important. And also using bulk tools and sort of thinking big in terms of data cleanup and consolidation to improve the discovery, access, and overlaps. So we want to know what has been digitized, what hasn't been digitized, But all of this work has had other people that have built the foundation. So there's lots of experts in this field that we're trying to connect with and not reinvent the wheel, not start these things from scratch. So the concept of done isn't really familiar for us. We're still looking backwards and looking for ways to improve. The full text search on archive.org has improved and has now the ability to search inside documents, which is an opportunity for us. So this is kind of a fun example, but this is a, searching for barbecue. There was sun today. And this is a really important publication on Ontario beans. So if you need a bean witch for the barbecue this weekend, there's a great recipe on archive.org. But on a more serious note, some of the publications that we digitized even years ago are going to help inform our project going forward. So this was Agri-Food Canada, I think maybe 2012 or 13 that we digitized these publication indexes and checklists. So we're now able to go search inside and see these lists of publications to see, have we digitized it? Have we missed some things? So delving into the full text, you can see, hopefully you can see the Handbook of Canadian Wheat, which, ta-da, we have digitized, but some of the other titles like Growing Flax from 1968 has not been digitized. So these, as I said, these collections, even going back to 2005, they're not only going to be part of the Democracy Library corpus, but be resources for the ongoing effort, which I think is great. Lastly, and briefly here, we're working with institutions and different consortia who are archiving, either with Archive.it or through other means, to consider ways of bridging the gap between digitized, born digital, and digitized content that is within web archives. So users don't really care how they come to their content. They are just wanting to be connected with what they're searching for, no matter of the format. So we're working on that within Democracy's Library as well. And I'm going to leave you all here. So we've worked really closely with a lot of government information librarians over the years. And this year in particular, Michelle Lake from Concordia and Graham Campbell from Queens. These are two government librarians with really deep experience. And at GovInfo Day in December, they presented this really succinct wish list that I think is really in line with what we've heard from many of our stakeholders. So these are sort of some key wish list items that we're working on. And I think it's sort of the perfect place to dismount here, but lots of work to come. And if I'm going to actually quickly put up our contact here. If you'd like to contribute or work with us on this project, we would love to hear from anyone to work with us. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Andrea. There are a couple of things that I remarked on. One of my first jobs was shelving government documents in the Queen's GovDocs library. So there was, as a student, not a librarian. So we have that in common. I made some notes here, and I think your quote of Claire's phrase, knowledge sharing is just as important, is so true, and that's what you've been doing here. And we have something like 150 participants, so it's a wonderful way to sort of disseminate. And I can also appreciate the concept of done is not really a thing for in this case. And I also I'll put later when we hit the question and answer time, I'll have a couple of questions to elaborate maybe a little bit on. And I tried to search for butter tart recipes in the internet because I was inspired by your recipe. But
I'll find one for you before the end. If you have it's butter tart season, I'll find you a recipe. Yeah.
I obviously did not construct my search properly, so shame on me. Thank you so much, Andrea. Okay, so now this brings us to our third speaker, Leanne Trimble, and the title of her presentation is Accessing Our Past, Improving Discovery of Historical Canadian Census Data and Maps. I've just double entered that. So sorry, improving discovery of historical Canadian census data and maps. So Leanne is data librarian at the University of Toronto at the Map and Data Library. She has a strong interest in improving access to historical data and is the PI for the Canadian Census Data Discovery Partnership Project. So Leanne, over to you.
Thank you. All right, I'm going to share my screen. Can everyone see that?
Yes.
Great. All right. Hi, everybody. Big thank you to the folks at Scholars Portal for inviting me to participate in this panel and speak to you about this project that I've been working on for a couple of years now, the Canadian Census Data Discovery Partnership, or CCDDP. So yes, I'm Leanne. I'm a data librarian at U of T's Map and Data Library. My sort of research interest, my area of interest is in historical data collections, improving how we access and use them, and that's how I ended up getting involved in this project. I'm speaking to you from the same building as Sabina at U of T, so I'm not going to repeat the same land acknowledgement that she made, but I want to acknowledge that the legacy of colonialism in Canada is really front and center when working with historical census data in the decisions that were made about who to count, how to group them, what names to refer to people by. And that's something we are taking very seriously in this project, and I will talk briefly about that later in my presentation. So our vision for this project is to build an open bilingual discovery portal for census data going back to the first censuses that were conducted in the pre-Confederation period. We've been working on the building blocks for this for quite some time, starting back in 2017 with an OCUL funded project amongst some members of the OCUL data community. We wanted to scope out the parameters of what we wanted to achieve and start to design a census data inventory. So a metadata collection that would describe all of the census data sets, maps, et cetera, that we could locate. And then in 2021, we received a SSHRC grant, which brought us into our current phase of the project, which has allowed us to kind of take this national, include colleagues in other provinces, build some new partnerships, and then also continue our work on our census inventory and plan for a final third phase of the project, which will be to build the actual discovery portal. Our current SSHRC grant project has these four main objectives. So we want to complete our inventory of census data. We're working on conducting a whole bunch of stakeholder and user consultations to kind of understand what people would want to see in a discovery portal for census data. We want to investigate the needs for national census discovery infrastructure, and we're going to wrap it up by developing a preliminary proof of concept for the discovery portal. So some sort of small working model that would illustrate what the inventory can allow us to do with the portal. And then we'll write a vision document for the next phase of the project. Our goal with this SSHRC grant is really to bring people together. So bring together some partners in academic libraries, the research community, and the government data custodians in order to discuss the access challenges and collaborate on some potential solutions. So we were really thrilled that both Statistics Canada and Library and Archives Canada agreed to sign on as formal partners for our project, along with 5 university libraries listed on the slide. And the grant has 9 individual investigators, including myself, and they include data librarians, government information librarians, and researchers. And then there are a whole bunch of additional wonderful people who have contributed their time and expertise to our project. So before I speak more about what exactly we've been doing, I thought I might take a few moments to talk about why we're pursuing this project, recognizing that not everyone here today may be a regular user of census data. So why? Well, we know that many librarians find it a challenge to support users seeking historical census materials. They're really not very user-friendly. Older materials in print can be hard to locate when they have been digitized. The data tables that they contain, they're in PDFs. They still aren't really machine readable. They're not in spreadsheets. They're not ready to use for data analysis. And even when there are digital data products, these are available in a whole range of difficult to use historical file formats. However, despite all of this, there is a high level of community interest. Data and government information librarians spend a significant amount of time helping folks with census data. And no wonder, since the census is Canada's largest and most comprehensive data source. There are censuses going back to 1665 in New France. Censuses prior to Confederation were conducted irregularly, and they were done by individual colony. And that's part of what makes access such a challenge, and what makes us so interested in doing this project. There are a lot of different types of materials that can be considered historical census data. So I'll show you a few of them. We have the original records taken by the census enumerators. These are often referred to as the census returns, and they're held by Library and Archives Canada. There are published tables in print and digital formats. There are maps, which can be sets of sheet maps, or they can be bound within volumes that have also other things like tables and things in them. And then there is geospatial data. So Statistics Canada began to produce what we call spatial boundary files in the 1980s. However, there have also been lots of different digitization projects within the research and academic library communities that have undertaken to generate spatial data from older reference maps. And then microdata files. These are detailed data sets that include the specific responses of individuals to census questions. And similar to geospatial data, we have a bit of a divide in availability here. Statistics Canada began producing them in 1971. And then there are research projects that have created microdata files for many censuses, sort of in the period between Confederation and 1921. But then the years in between, the data to do projects like that is not yet available. It only become available once those data are released from Statistics Canada over to LAC, which happens 92 years after each census was taken. And then finally, lots and lots of reference publications, although often not nearly as many as we would like for the really old censuses. So given the range of data types of products, it's not too surprising that access is pretty fragmented. Some of the material is available from the government, but spread out amongst Statistics Canada and LAC, and then there's the Government of Canada Publications site. We also have platforms originating within the library community, including several Scholars Portal platforms. So Odesi, Scholars GeoPortal, and the Books platform all provide access to different formats of census data, and also the Internet Archive. This means that there's a lot of access to these materials that doesn't go directly through government dissemination channels. And then there are additional platforms coming out of the research community that provide access to the outputs of specific data creation projects. And these ones can be really challenging for users to find if they're not already aware of these projects' existence. They just want data from a particular census. So that's the current landscape. So what we are hoping to do is create a single access point that people can go to discover all of these different material types for all time periods. The platform should have consistent metadata and rich search functionality, so it can provide results at what we call the item level. So you can identify, say, individual data tables rather than just the publication that the table is found within. So to that end, we're creating this inventory, and it includes all those kinds of formats that I've just talked about. And this is our little diagram that was trying to organize all of them. And we decided on a set of metadata fields to collect, and we've built a database using a software platform called Airtable. And we're really liking Airtable because it allows our team members to collaborate from anywhere. It's like Google Sheets, but provides a relational database structure on the back end. The only downside is Airtable is a proprietary platform. So once we've completed populating this inventory, we will move it over to some sort of open source solution. In terms of populating our inventory, we are starting to see the end in sight at this point. 119 censuses out of the 140 that we identified have now been inventoried. The bulk of this work has been done by student employees, but also many librarians and library staff have volunteered hours of their time as well, for which we are very thankful. Many of the fields in our inventory are populated from controlled vocabularies. Actually, I'll go back a bit. You can see all the columns that have blue bubbles in them. Those are entries that are selected from controlled vocabularies. And those are stored as related tables within the database. And here's one example showing geographic units, so the geographic breakdowns that are provided for the data. And we're tracking a lot of information about how things like the different geographic terms relate to one another, during which time periods they were used, and so on. So we can see these authority lists themselves being a pretty useful resource in and of themselves once they're complete. Similarly, our subjects authority list maps terminology used in the census to a set of sort of broader subject terms that are in contemporary use. As I mentioned earlier, the census is part of Canada's colonial legacy, and there are many outdated and discriminatory terms used in these items that we're inventorying. So our goal is for our own metadata to be as respectful as possible. That's a work in progress, but that's the goal. But however, like recognizing that the harmful language exists in the materials themselves, we're also investigating other ways that we can mitigate harm and help ensure that users are aware of the context surrounding the creation of the materials that they're discovering in our portal. So to better understand this and other issues, we've been conducting a range of consultations over the last few years with librarians, researchers, representatives from stakeholder organizations who are already involved in the census data dissemination landscape in Canada. And so for each of these initiatives listed on the slide, we're putting together summary reports, which we will make available on our website. And the link to our website is on the final slide of my slide deck, so you'll be able to get it there. So yeah, the one at the bottom, the inclusive census discovery consultation, is one we're working on to get input from members of equity-seeking groups about the ways that we could design our portal to minimize harm and to make sure that these kind of issues are being at least acknowledged in the portal. Finally, during our current project phase, we aim to produce a simple working proof of concept of what the discovery portal could offer, making use of our inventory. The idea is to let people be able to drill down to specific data that will help them answer their questions. So for example, I want to find out what data was collected in the 19th century about Canada's Indigenous peoples. Well, okay, setting aside the fact that there will be many issues with that data, given the way that it was collected, we also know that finding it is not a straightforward task. There were many censuses in that time period. And then the pre-Confederation period, they were regional, so that there'll be one for this colony and one for that colony, and sort of takes a long time to pull together that data. The censuses may or may not have included Indigenous people. Each one would have to be checked individually. And then, there was a wide range of terminology used to describe the Indigenous population over time. And those terms I would not repeat out loud. So with our discovery portal, we want to be able to let people to input like a subject term and a range of dates and get back everything that we've identified as being about meeting those parameters. So this is our early screenshot of our early prototype that we're working on at the moment. You can sort of see here that we put in like several census years and Indigenous peoples, and we got back these entries. And you can see that most of the tables did not mention Indigenous peoples in the title. Some don't even mention that race or ethnic origin is included in the table. So this is the power of the inventory, is we'll be able to find things that you wouldn't know were there unless you really went and dug around in the past. So this portal, this proof of concept will improve, but it also will never be beautiful, because the goal is just to kind of demonstrate. All right, so that's it for me pretty much. That's my overview of what we've been working on. Where will we go from here? We're currently at the beginning of the third year of our 3-year project, so we'll be wrapping things up this year, finishing the deliverables of the project and working on our final report. And then in the next phase, we hope to build the discovery portal, find some sort of sustainable home for it, and build a production ready version of it. And yeah, we just hope to continue the partnerships that we have started, and kind of work on how to make sure that not only is there a discovery portal, but all this material is properly cared for and will remain accessible for the long term. So yeah, that's it for me.
Thank you, Leanne. The thing I wrote down for your presentation was 119 of the 140 inventories are completed.
Yes.
But is it possible there could be more, like after you hit 140, will others emerge, or you really done, like unlike Andrea, done for Andrea, the done is not a concept, but
yeah, we are going to have to figure out sort of the sustainability, because I think it'll always be mostly done once we get to that point, because there'll be few and far between things that we discover we didn't know about. But that is also sort of going forward, new censuses being conducted,
absolutely,
including them. so on.
Cool. Well, and I agree with what Jennifer Decker said in the chat. I'm also really looking forward to seeing how this, but so the phase 2 project wrap up will be the end of March next year, 2024. So we just have to be patient till that.
Yes, and there still won't be like a fully working portal at that point, but we are going to make the data set available, put it in Borealis, so
Okay.
people can
Cool.
make use of it themselves
Fantastic.
and while they wait for our slow moving project.
Awesome. Thank you, Leanne. So I think this is the point where I was just checking the Q&A section, and there are no questions entered at this moment, but this is a good time to do so. Any of our speakers? I'm not seeing any, Sabina, but all right, is that accurate that there are none yet?
Yeah, it looks like we don't have any questions yet, but a reminder that you can enter them into the Q&A module. And Catherine, maybe you can start with the questions that that you had. I think you mentioned
Sure.
you had some questions come up as you
I
were
do.
talking.
I'm happy to jump in, but you will not be typing them into Q&A. I'll just read them out because I can't. So this one's for Jeff. I don't know if we want to put everybody's cameras back on, but so there was one thing I noted, and Jeff, I don't know if you can speak to every single. There was a lot of content on in your slides, but on slide 17 there was all the circles, and one of them with symbols that sort of appended to them, and you had mentioned that the CAC is helping revitalize Indigenous language, is what I think I wrote down. And I just was curious what form that might take. How would that be?
Well, to be honest with you, what I've done is I've plumbed the depths of the Compute Ontario annual reports, which have a far more fulsome description of each of the very necessarily brief examples I gave. But my understanding is that they're taking video and audio recordings and using them with high performance computing to actually transcribe the spoken words of elders in order to capture and preserve Indigenous languages. And that may be a very poor description of what's actually happening, but that's my baseline understanding of it.
So if we went to look at those annual reports that you plumbed the depths of, would we get more detail?
I can scare up the I think there's a link to them, and if it's
Okay.
computeontario.ca, but I'll try and look one up if I'm not answering questions. And I do, if you're looking for questions, I don't seem to be able to ask questions as a panelist, but I do have a question for Leanne. If you have the opportunity sometime.
Oh, absolutely. I just have one more for you, Jeff, and that was about the 2023 summer school. You said that's the Compute Ontario summer school. So, and you said that's open to anybody?
Absolutely. Yeah. And in fact, it's probably one of the best kept secrets, which shouldn't be kept. It's been there for 20 plus years. And I think it's probably floated around in the background with a lot of high performance computing and programming languages and GPUs and parallel processing, which would not have been interesting necessarily to the crowd on this call. But there are things on the syllabus right now that I think will be of incredible interest to this group, and many of which are introductory. And I use that term somewhat guardedly because what an HPC expert thinks is introductory may not necessarily jive with what Jeff thinks is introductory. But there are things like Python, R, Jupyter notebooks, some other stuff that would lean into the kinds of work that is happening. And attending the text and data mining conference, I heard more about R and Python and notebooks, Jupyter notebooks, than you would even ever have guessed. We're in the thick of this, and so I would encourage all of you to look at that. And there are those 6 RDM sessions on June 12th and 13th, which I'm plugging shamelessly, but the rest of the sessions are worth looking at as well.
So we should just look for the URL for that.
I can, the syllabus is not out yet, but if you go to the ComputeOntario.ca, you'll find a link to the summer school.
Okay.
The syllabus isn't out yet. We are just firming it up, but it's coming soon.
Okay, so yay. Irena put in a question into the Q&A right following on the heels of this, which is the summer school online?
Fully online, 2 streams. So yeah, you won't be able to attend everything, but you can pick the stream that you want or the side of the stream you want. And it's running for roughly 2.5, almost 3 weeks, all online.
Okay. Fantastic. Okay, so this is probably a good time, Jeff, for you to pose your question to Leanne.
Well, first of all, Leanne, it is such an ambitious project, and I'm so impressed by the work you've accomplished. And being, I think, among friends here, like, all of us on this call have this government documents pedigree, or the 4 people I'm seeing. And I have a long-standing love for GovDocs, which I fell into accidentally when I arrived at Queen's as a data librarian, but was also told, oh, by the way, you're also a GovDocs librarian. So I have a love for the census, as I think Leanne probably knows. And again, I want to underscore how amazing the work you're doing looks and is and will be. I have one question though. How do you deal with those interactive resources that Stats Canada started pushing upon us all, where you would be able to go in and move a slider and see things move around and all the rest? How are you attempting to, or are you not attempting to, capture some of these more interactive data in the back end, not on the front end resources?
So right now, so we're not really like trying to address the problem of if a particular resource is hosted by a particular data custodian and it's on the web, will it be there for the long term? That's something we want to deal with, but that's not an easy task. And that's one of the things that the partnership talks about. But that's kind of like more of our next phase, sort of infrastructure project phase, is like figuring out if there's some way that we can capture those potentially ephemeral things that make sure that they're not lost in the long term. For now, what we would do would be to inventory it in our database and provide the link to where it is right now. And if it's some sort of like dashboard or whatever, we would treat that as one item and just give it a row, call it whatever was the most appropriate type of resource, and call it done. So we're not really like overthinking these ones, but they're definitely more challenging for sure.
And just as a follow-up that I'll turn over to Andrea, in the realm of government documents, and I'm not sure if you're familiar with them, I'm going to bet you are, but maybe there are books that were put out by the publications put up by the Government of Canada on diplomatic representatives abroad. And they would basically say, here's the jurisdiction and here are the current ambassadors or other diplomats in those jurisdictions. And they were print resources for years and years and years and years. And I'm sure that they're in the Internet Archive and in various collections across the country. And then they were turned into a database. And they were, the tyranny of the current. They were always updated. So if you were the ambassador to France and then you weren't, you were out of the database. And nobody could ever find out that you were the ambassador to France for a period. So I'm wondering if you're looking at addressing some of those back-end issues, those hidden issues.
Definitely, but I will give a shout out to the OCUL GIC group, because they've been thinking about this even like years prior, in digitizing the Ontario government phone book for these purposes, like, because those are going back in time. And you're exactly right. They've web archived the current database, but going back in time, what was the shape of government? Who were the departments people were in? How did they move around? So, and this is just something that's occurring to me now. Was just a current project, and I'm forgetting the person's name. It was like, I was posted on Twitter, that had used the current database to visualize the structure of the Canadian federal government. The OCUL GIC group had been thinking about it going backwards. So I'm hopeful that we can help digitize the print as the raw materials for a project like that. So not just Ontario, could we do federal? And the Foreign Service wasn't even on my radar, but I'm sure there are lots of versions of this. So it's sort of the power of what we can do once we have this information all in a digital format.
Thanks, that's great. Thank you.
Okay, I'm just seeing another question. And I'll read it out. Hi, Andrea, thank you for your presentation. I love the IA. I was wondering if the US lawsuit decision siding with the publisher over the online library is affecting the digitization work you are doing in the Canadian context.
I thank you, Hujma, for asking that. I knew someone would ask. So the activities in Canada are very separated from what's happening in the United States. And it's, of course, a huge struggle, and it has taken a lot of our time and energy. But at the present, it will not affect the operations of Internet Archive Canada. We have our infrastructure here. It's a separate entity. So we're definitely there in solidarity with the US in this fight, but it's not even a legal test for controlled digital lending in Canada, right? It's a separate country, separate copyright law. So good question. I actually am glad someone brought it up.
Thank you, Hujma. Now I did notice there's something in the chat directed to you, Jeff. Would you provide link to text mining session at U Toronto? Resources that you mentioned in your talk.
I'm not sure if the resources are linked yet, but I will dig around a little bit, as long as you don't mind me being rude and looking at my other monitor. And I will dig around a bit and try and throw something into the chat before the end of the session.
Thank you. I had one question for Andrea. Remember, I knew that it was when you had mentioned in one of your slides about the partnership with NICLA, and I was just curious if you if this is in the sort of early stages, is there much to elaborate on, or where's it heading?
So we're one of the groups that are providing funding to NICLA for the work that they are embarking on. So we're a member and supporting that work, but it's led by NICLA. And I know there's a lot of different groups working on updating metadata in relation to Indigenous people. So we're there, we're putting our resources towards helping, but we're being led by NICLA.
Absolutely. Okay, I'm just looking around, see. Thank you, Alex. Put the text mining website into chat. And Jeff put another link into chat. Great. So I think we're at 11:17. And I think it seems like we're coming up to a good conclusion. I just want to say a huge thank you to all three of our speakers. And also, at one point we had like around 150 participants. So we really have had some reach for your talk. So very much appreciated. And it's in keeping with the title of New Partnerships, New Perspectives. So thank you very much. Sabina, is that over to you at this point?
Yeah, thank you everybody for I think those are all some really interesting projects, and we've all learned a lot. There's been some great messages in the chat about all the work that's gone into these projects, all the kind of cool stuff that we've talked about today, the importance of having frameworks for linking things together, data, publications, and all these different types of resources that we're working with, and for linking together all of the different people and groups who are doing a whole bunch of different projects in this area. So I think that this panel really kind of brought together a lot of really great stuff. And I will highlight that this recording is going to be made available after the fact for those of you who might have colleagues that weren't able to be here today who might find this an interesting conversation. So thank you, everybody. We're running a little bit ahead of schedule, which is very exciting for me, at least. So I think what we're going to do is we're going to take a break now. We're going to take about 5 minutes, and then we're going to move into the Scholars Portal Day Pet Parade, which is a lot of people's favorite part of Scholars Portal Day, in fact. So you can stick around for that. Of course, it is still a break, so no need to stick around if you're not interested in cute pets, but I mean, who isn't interested in cute pets? So thank you, everybody. We're gonna pause for 5 minutes. Lightning talkers for later. You might be getting a little notification to move up to the panelist role, but everyone else, you can go and take a little pit stop for 5 minutes, and then we'll come back and do the pet parade. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Sabina. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Hi, everybody. It is time for the Scholars Portal Day Pet Parade. I want to start off by thanking everybody who submitted pictures of their pets and of other things that they have loved and cared for that are not necessarily pets. We will be going through these pretty quickly, I think, because we have a lot of pictures today. Alex, it is not going to be a mystery because I have credited each picture to the person who submitted it. All right, I think I'm actually going to turn my camera off so that you can get a full screen view of the pets on parade. And let's get started. So our first submission here comes from Dan Scott from Laurentian, because he emailed me this picture within like seconds of me sending out the call for pet parades. This is Chonk, a bearded dragon. It's kind of stretching out on a gray rock face with a beautiful orange color. Up next, we have Irma. Irma is a rescue from Turkey and a pink and white princess, white with some pink coloration and also brown spots, including a brown spot over her eye that makes her look a little bit like a wishbone, if you remember. And here she is just grinning up at the camera while on a long walk. Now we have a very adorable little puppy. This is Lenny, who is a 10-week-old golden retriever. On the left, you can see Lenny getting some breeze out the car window with the ears kind of flapping adorably. And on the right, curled up on a blanket, looking very cute and very sleepy. Next, we have Natasha, who is a Scottish fold cat. She's a very light gray, almost white cat with huge, very cute eyes. We have two pictures here. In one, she is kind of giving the camera a bit of a look, and in the other one, she is clearly not happy about being put into a Christmas costume and is giving the camera quite a grumpy look. Next up, we have Archie, who is a Cocker Spaniel. And this is submitted by Krista from OCUL, who writes that he's a lovable boy with giant cookie monster paws and floppy ears. It also has these really cute polka dots, almost like freckles on his nose. A very, very cute puppy. Next up, we have Hammy the hamster, submitted by Aaron from York. And Aaron writes that he wanted to name the hamster a cute name like Hamuel Jackson or Hammy Davis Jr., but he was overruled in favor of Hammy the hamster, the most original pet name of all time. Alexander Hamilton, that's a good one. Okay, up next we have Louis, who is a Poodle Bouvier mix. Got some nice dark gray, kind of blackish fur. It's submitted by Joe from Scholars Portal, and she told me that normally when she tries to take pictures of Louis, he looks so serious that she calls him Sir Lewiston. But on the right, she's taken a picture with Louis where he has his usual kind of goofy self sticking out his tongue and kind of grinning at the camera. Next, we have Tanya, who is kind of like a tortoiseshell cat, and here she is enjoying one level of her new very tall cat tower, kind of smiling at the camera. Up next, we have an AI contribution. This is submitted by Debbie, who used Midjourney to turn a picture of Bella, her 7-year-old Australian Shepherd Poodle mix, into a Muppet. So you can see with the big eyes, very, very Muppet-like. Here we have another amazing dog. This is Seamus, who is a rescue puppy and is part Bernese Mountain Dog and part Shih Tzu. So we have two shots, one where Seamus is sort of majestically reclining on the windowsill, and another where Seamus is grinning up at the camera. Submitted by Melissa from St. Clair College, who says that Seamus has truly earned the title of good boy, best boy. We have another cat up next. This is Radar, who's a ginger tabby cat and is supervising work from home, as I'm sure many cat owners are familiar with the cat's very close attention during their work from home time. Up next, we have Lima, who's a silver miniature poodle and getting ready to put out some fires, posing with a very fashionable yellow raincoat to match Lima's very fashionable kind of froofy poodle hairdo next to a bright red fire hydrant. Next, this is a first for the Scholars Portal Day Pet Parade. We have some snails. Just two very cute snails named Lila and Lola, who are enjoying what looks like a stalk of celery. This is from Alex at OCUL, so Alex can tell me if I'm right about their celery snack. We have another cat. This is Bear, who is a black cat with you know, one of those cats with the very black with the little green eyes. She's a 5-year-old Bombay rescue from Montreal. And Gidsley also shared the information that even though Bear is perfectly capable of climbing onto any chair in the house, Bear prefers to sit in front of the chair, stare at you, and meow loudly until you lift her up onto the chair yourself. Why should Bear exert any physical effort when she has a human who can do the lifting for her? Which is, I think, very familiar to a lot of cat owners. So we have 2 pictures submitted by Katrina from OCUL. On the left, we have Titan, who is a Pouchon, which is a Bichon Poodle cross. I had never heard that term before, so thank you, with black fur. And this is one of his first visits to the dog beach, and his black fur is all covered in sand. It's very cute. On the right, we have Princess Zoe Bear Muffykins, aka Zoe, who's I think it's a tortoiseshell cat with really, really nice light green eyes in her favorite hangout spot, which is a former bread basket, and her little paws sticking out through the handle of the bread basket. We have a plant entry. This is Wendy, which is who is a Pilea plant, and I love the leaves on this plant. They're really large and round, almost like lily pads. Very gorgeous, and a nice big plant. Spectacular. Next, we have Wyatt, who's a 1-year-old Springer Spaniel. This is beautiful coloring, like chocolate brown with white leg socks. I don't know dog terminology. I don't know why I am the one to narrate these since I know nothing about dogs, but very cute dog with the furry ears and his tongue sticking out, enjoying a sunny day. This submission is from Robin Burgart at Guelph. It is actually 7 newborn chipmunks that Robin discovered under the hood of her car in a nest that was made out of the air filter and other components. So you can kind of see the little pink newborn chipmunks, a bunch of them kind of curled together in the middle of a nest. And Robin has reported that all the chipmunk babies were successfully reunited with their mother in the end. Next up, we have Luna, who's a black lab, and Luna is looking very happy to be out in the sunshine, smiling at the camera. And this is from Lori from TMU, who reports that this was Luna's first visit to the lake, and she loved it and tried to bite all the waves. Here we have 2 pictures from Ryan Tucci from Carleton. On the left, we have Kaya, who's a high energy husky. She looks very majestic in this picture, kind of almost very light colored, almost white husky with the gorgeous brown eyes that huskies tend to have. And Ryan reports Kaya loves sticks, but doesn't share the same fondness for tennis balls. And sometimes they wonder if she's actually a cat. And on the right, we have Archer, aka Archiekins, Archibald, Archie, and Archie Bunker, who is a Chihuahua, I think, who is making a very goofy face at the camera with the tongue out and the big eyes, kind of being a goofball, but is also the sweetest puppo in the universe. So very cute. Next, we have Oberon, who is a fat brown cat with white paws and a white chest. And here Oberon is sitting on a puzzle that is currently in progress and looking right at the camera like he knows exactly what he's doing, blocking your access to the puzzle. Maybe he does want to help. You never know. Okay, so next up we have Twyla, aka Mrs. Binkles, this is submitted by Laura Newton Miller at Carleton, who says that Twyla enjoys snuggles and protecting us from squirrels. And Twyla is, oh, help me out here. I don't know what dogs are. A very cute dog with floppy ears, which I think is adorable. And maybe a dachshund. Yes, I think so. Okay, next up we have Judy, and Judy is another puppy with some, it looks like dark brown fur, very cute little snout, who's looking very seriously up at the camera. Oh, Lynn says she's a 4-year-old Australian Labradoodle. She's lovely, but a handful and also very lazy. And we have another plant entry. This is a beautiful pilea from Catherine Davidson, who has shared us this. I really love the shape of these leaves, the almost completely circular leaves, and it looks like a very well cared for plant. Catherine shares that her name is now Penelope. And this is a late entry. Rose just emailed me this morning, and I like rushed it in while the panel was happening earlier. So thank you, Rose. This is Harvey. Harvey is a very cute puppy who is wearing a little Toronto Maple Leafs scarf, and apparently hoping that the Leafs will bounce back, which I know is a controversial sentiment among people who are rooting for different teams in these hockey playoffs. So I got through those way faster than I thought. That was the last image in our slideshow. So thank you, everybody. I'm going to stop sharing for now. Thank you so much to everybody who sent in your pictures. Thank you for everyone who added comments in the chat. I think that we got a really great submissions this year. So we have some pretty amazing pets that everybody has in OCUL, across OCUL, and also across our other institutions that are represented here today. So we will also be making these slides available if you want to go back and check some of the cutest ones on Spot Docs. So we're going to have another brief pause now. What we're going to do is we're going to get all of our lightning talkers set up as speakers. And then we're going to start the lightning talks at about 11:45 Eastern time. So lightning talkers, hang on. We're about to try to promote you to speaker status, and everybody else just hang tight for a moment and plan what you're going to submit next year for the pet parade, maybe. Here we go. Okay, everyone, it's 11:45 and it's time for our lightning talks for Friday. I'm going to pass it over to Katrina Fortner, who is going to be moderating this lightning talk session.
Great. Thank you so much, Sabina, and a very warm welcome to everyone joining the lightning talks on this second day of Scholars Portal Day 2023. Hopefully everyone enjoyed the pet parade, a really entertaining break. So thank you for narrating that so well, Sabina. It was really entertaining. As Sabina mentioned, my name is Katrina and I am part of the OCUL team, and I am really pleased to help moderate this morning's lightning talks and introduce the fantastic group of speakers presenting today. Before we get started, just a reminder that if you have any questions for our lightning talk speakers, please use the Q&A feature at the bottom of your Zoom screen, and we will read them out to the presenters and audience at the end of each talk. You can also upvote questions if you'd like to hear those answered. So turning it over to our first presenters, this presentation was developed by Vivek Jadon from McMaster and Alex Cooper from Queens. And Alex joins us today to present their lightning talk, Odesi Markit Program, a curation model for data.
Thank you very much. And I'm just going to share my screen. Oh, sorry. There we go. Okay, and you can see my screen?
We can.
Okay, great. Yes, Katrina said, I'm going to be talking about the Odesi Markit program and the curation practices that we follow for marking up data sets in Odesi. So starting in 2010, the Markit program is funded by Scholars Portal and allows OCUL schools to hire students to mark up data sets for deposit in Odesi. Schools are responsible for hiring, training, supervising students to work throughout the school year. And each year we have at least one bilingual student who works primarily on French data sets. The Markit program, the work is tracked through a markup list, which is a Google Doc that lists newly released data sets that need to be added to Odesi, anything that needs work done on it because new versions of data or documentation have been released, or errors have been found in the metadata, or just general cleanup to bring the records up to best practices standards. And any other project that we come up with that helps make Odesi better for our users. Oh, sorry, hold on. This work is discussed at our bi-monthly Markit meetings. While the Markit program does not formally report to the Ontario data community, we do provide updates and projects. A lot of projects have come out of ODC meetings. So when we're considering any changes or additions to Odesi, the Markit group will regularly consult with the ODC. And the original idea of Odesi actually came out of the former ODC, which was called Data in Ontario, which their acronym was DINO. So this is a screenshot of the markup list that we use to keep track of the work and who's working on what. This is an essential part of the Markit program. When new data is released or the Scholars Portal will add it to the list, and one of the schools will sign up to add the data to Odesi. And currently, the schools involved in the Markit program are Queen's, U of T, and McMaster. The Markit program also makes use of the Odesi Help, the Ontario Data Community, Statistics Canada DLI, and Markit listservs to identify files that need work or identify any projects that come up. And our training is another essential part of the program. We have developed a number of documents, which are listed here, written by both the supervisors and the students that are used in the curation practice. If you'd like to review any of these documents, we can provide them for you. All of them but the best practices guide are not publicly available, but we're happy to share them out. And the link on this slide for the best practices guide, you can access that through the link. So yesterday, Ginsley and Alicia presented about the Odesi migration and the Odesi migration training materials working group. So this working group has been working on creating and editing documentations for curating data sets in Borealis. And this is an important part because we do have a lot of documentation. There's a lot of different ways to mark up data sets. This is a very important working group that's has taken what exists and is building on it. And when these are finished, the Markit group will be reviewing these documents and using them to learn how to deposit and edit files in Borealis once the Odesi is migrated over there. So now on to the curation part of this presentation. Curation is a multifaceted, multi-stepped, ongoing process that I'll go through in more detail on the next slide. Moving Odesi to Borealis will allow the Markit program to continue these curation practices that we've developed and improve on them through the use of the data curation tool, better versioning control, DOIs, and improved searching and the use of filters. So the first step in the data curation, is to gather all the data and documentation that has been released. We then check the data files and run outputs to see if there's any corrections that may need to be done to related to things like character encoding or missing values. And we also check that we have all the available documentation. We then move on to creating the metadata for the data set based on the documentation we've received. And then one of the practices that is most popular among our users is the enhancement of a data file by marking up each individual variable with question text, interview, and universe notes, waiting for each variable and grouping the variables. And it's this part that takes the majority of the work and the longest time. And then these curation steps, with these curation steps, searching proves to be, can be done down to the question text level and provides much better results. And it makes the data even more findable and the searching easier. Users can also explore, analyze, and download the data at this point. And then the final step is the data discovery and reuse, where the data can be used to expand on research. Using the curation practices has helped make the data in Odesi fair, which has led to its impact on research. A search of Odesi in Scholars Portal journals provides results where Odesi has been cited as a source for the article. And that link there under the bullet point cite research data and published articles, if you click on that, that will take you to the search result in Scholars Portal journals. Data exploration and analysis tools have also allowed users who would not normally use data in the projects to include it. Odesi also provides long-term preservation of data, and our curation best practices and guidelines are contributing to other best practices and guidelines. For instance, the Alliance Dataverse Curation Guide and the Metadata Best Practices Guide used our curation practices as a base for those guides. Finally, if you have any questions or comments about Odesi or our curation practices, or would like to know more, you can contact any of us at these emails. And the very first link at the top of the slide is to the Odesi page, so you can just look up Odesi if you'd like. Thank you very much.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, Alex. It's really great to learn a little bit more about Odesi and the Markit program. So we'll give some folks a couple minutes to perhaps populate some questions in the Q&A. But I'm certainly happy to ask a question as somebody who's not really too familiar with Odesi yet, having only been with OCUL for a few months at this point. I'm just curious if you can talk a little bit more about the curation best practices you mentioned, and if there was kind of one that is near and dear to your heart, or if there is something that you kind of see that is consistent across different curation projects.
So the one best practice that is near and dear to my heart, and as I said, is the most popular one, is the providing metadata for the variable level. For the variables, so right down to the question text level. And the one great thing about that is that it does allow a user to search right down to the question text. So when you're searching for a data set, you're getting much more results because you're actually searching the actual questions asked in the survey. But for me, personally, the most important part in curation is the documentation. And that's when I'm working with researchers and talking to them about research data management or depositing their data in Borealis, I really push the documentation. Having these data sets are great, but they're useless if someone can't use them. And if you have a bunch of variables that have weird names or are not described, then your user can't use them. And if the data set is 5 years old, a researcher is not going to want to answer questions 5 years after a project is done. So that's my my big thing with curation, is making sure the documentation is as full and complete as possible, because otherwise it's useless.
Thank you. I appreciate that very much. We have a question from Amy Rutherford, who's asking, do you and other staff do the marking up of data, or do the researchers do it themselves?
So for Odesi, the majority of the content in Odesi is Statistics Canada data and public use opinion polls. So it is the Markit group that does the marking up of the data, and does everything I described in the data curation lifecycle. And that also primarily is done by our students within the Markit program. So each year when I hire a student, I spend most of September and October training them on the best practices and teaching them that. Outside of Odesi, so in the other part of my job, which is research data management, when I'm working with researchers that way who are depositing in Borealis, then I'm instructing them on how to mark up the data set. So they're doing that themselves.
Great. I see a comment from Carolyn just in the chat saying the Markit students are awesome.
Yes. Actually, I'll also point out that both Amber and Ginsley were Markit students when they were at the University of Ottawa, and after finishing their schooling, ended up at Scholars Portal. So they're our favorite Markit students. And we've had Markit students who have gone on to work with data or work within the librarian or library field because of their work with the Markit program. So it's not only research impact, it's job creating impact. Oh, and Carolyn Sullivan, sorry, Carolyn, yes, she used to be she was the Markit student at Western. So she is also one of my favorites too.
That's great. And Amy just shares that that must be a lot of work, and thanks you for your answer.
Thanks.
Perfect. That just about wraps up our time for this first lightning talk. So thank you, Alex. Very much appreciate your presentation this morning. And I will shift us over to our second lightning talk today, which is coming to us from Megan Goodchild from Queens. And she's going to provide an update on Borealis, the Canadian Dataverse repository. Megan, take it.
Thank you so much. Hopefully you can see the slides and hear me okay. Wonderful. So it's definitely tough to follow the pet parade, as well as the interesting update from Alex on the Odesi Markit program. Really important work there. But I'm really delighted to be here today to provide an update on Borealis, the Canadian Dataverse repository. And after this update, I'm actually joined by Danica Evering from McMaster. We'll be sharing with you a community-led collaborative project that is related to Borealis, so please stay tuned for that as well. But as a refresher, Borealis is a bilingual, multidisciplinary Canadian research data repository that supports open discovery, management, sharing, and preservation of research data. It's a shared service provided in partnership with Canadian Regional Academic Library Consortia, institutions, research organizations, and the Digital Research Alliance of Canada. And the technical infrastructure is hosted by Scholars Portal and the University of Toronto Library, so it is a true collaboration as well. So I thought it would be helpful to begin by looking at some of the highlights from the past year. We're now coming up on the 1-year anniversary of launching our new name, Borealis, our beautiful branding featuring the Aurora Borealis, and the new website domain, which is at borealisdata.ca. We debuted a new look and improved content on our splash page and about page. We also published new and updated policy statements and documentation in both English and French. This included an updated terms of use, a new technology infrastructure and security information document, a new preservation plan, a new privacy statement, and an updated user guide. So we were really excited about that launch, which happened spring 2022. In terms of usage, the service continues to grow. There are over 13,000 published data sets with over 236,000 files uploaded, and this represents about 8.7 terabytes of data. And we're close to 14 million downloads, which is extremely exciting. We now have 69 subscribing institutions to the service across Canada, and this includes 2 that we're currently onboarding right now. We had 8 institutions joining in the past year that are listed there in the text. So each institution manages their own collection and can build services to support data deposit and sharing for their local researchers. A particular note is Aurora College. This is the first institution to join from the Northwest Territories. So in this map, you can see the most northern point. This is the northern campus in Inuvik. So we can really say that we have representation from coast to coast up in the north as well. So it's really exciting to see the service continue to expand and also evolve. So now I'll touch on some ongoing projects that we've been focusing on in the past year. An important focus over the past year was really building a community to support those institutional Dataverse collection administrators. We initiated a new Borealis Dataverse community facilitation team. This is to support this growing community of Borealis Dataverse collection administrators, as I mentioned. And this team is the result of a collaboration between the Borealis team and also Dataverse North. This is an expert group as part of the Alliance's network of experts. We manage a listserv for knowledge exchange and also lead monthly community meetings. And at these meetings, we cover things like the Borealis service updates, Dataverse North community updates. We cover community questions and engage in discussion. And we also cover special topics. Sometimes we invite invited speakers and experts. Sorry, we also initiated a new series that's called Learn with Borealis. And this is really to focus more in depth on different subjects and share expertise. We hosted our first one in February. This was an intro to APIs. This is really to build knowledge around using the Borealis APIs. And we also included a research use case. We welcomed Professor Zach Taylor from Western, who outlined his approach for using the APIs to deposit historical and contemporary Canadian aggregate census data, which was really exciting and well attended. We are planning some upcoming sessions, including one on permissions, which is my very favorite topic, of course, and also one on data reuse, as well as some other events we're planning in collaboration with the Curation expert group at the Alliance. So next, we'd like to share some ongoing initiatives. This is really to enhance the platform and its functionality to better support researchers in our community. And this is going along that theme of Scholars Portal Days for Refresh, Reframe, Renew. We're constantly trying to update the platform to better meet the needs of the researchers. So researchers are increasingly looking for solutions to provide controlled access to their data. We're hoping to participate in a national project led by the Alliance to improve infrastructure and to collaboratively develop policy frameworks to improve workflows in this area. In response to ongoing feedback from the community, we're also participating in developing the integration between the Dataverse software and Globus as an external transfer tool. This would facilitate transfers of large files and also large volumes of files for upload and download. And as you heard at the Scholars Portal update yesterday, we're also in the process of migrating Odesi, which will improve the sustainability of the service and will include an integrated discovery catalog. So be sure to check out the beta release video for more details, and we can put a link in the chat later. We've also been working on a number of improvements in collaboration with the international Dataverse community as well to better support disciplinary use cases. This includes things like geospatial data, social science metadata, and computational workflows. And again, this is based on the feedback from the community and that interest as well. So what's next? What's on the horizon? Stay tuned for a few things. We're planning to upgrade to version 5.13 on May 24th. And this is a really important upgrade to support the Odesi migration that's happening following that. We have some communications planned, including a blog post that will outline some of those new features. In terms of training and outreach, as I mentioned, the Learn with Borealis series. We're also planning on presenting at the Compute Ontario Summer School in June, as we heard from Jeff earlier today. We also had a graduate student working with us from the iSchool who helped us develop some promotional and training videos. These are really targeting end users. These will be launched on our new YouTube channel over the next few months. So please stay tuned for that, and obviously lots more that we've been working on as well. So I just wanted to take a quick moment to acknowledge the fantastic team at Borealis, which includes librarians, developers, and systems administrators. We also receive a number of, a lot of support actually from other members of the Scholars Portal team who assist with everything from the upgrades to support tickets to strategic planning and things like that. So thanks for having me here for the lightning talk. Please feel free to reach out to us anytime at the contact form at borealisdata.ca. And I'm happy to answer any questions you have now or even after the next lightning talk as well.
Terrific. Thanks so much, Megan. We're seeing lots of positive responses, both to the branding and the different work that's being undertaken with Borealis. So thank you so much for sharing that update today. And since we are going to be kind of moving into our third lightning talk, which also includes you and Danica, as you mentioned, we can start that presentation. And if folks have any questions in the interim, feel free to put them in the Q&A module, and I will keep an eye on that. And I will introduce Danica, who's going to join us as well. And with Megan, obviously. Danica joins us from McMaster, and I will turn it over to you.
I'll just make sure Danica's there.
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, so I couldn't see you.
Oh, no. Oh, really? Okay. Can you all see me?
I can see you now.
Okay, good. Maybe I just wasn't talking enough.
There we go. Yes. So thanks for joining me, Danica. So we're just shifting gears slightly to focus on a Borealis related project. Danica and I are two members of a working group that has been developing and implementing a community-led collaboration to survey Canadian Dataverse administrators. So I'll just kind of give a little bit of overview about this community. So in the Borealis update that I just gave, you would have heard a little bit about the growth of the national infrastructure and service. And also over the past 10 years, the Dataverse administrator community in Canada has been growing and evolving. These are librarians or other staff members who manage an institutional Dataverse collection, or in some cases a repository if they're not participating in the Borealis service. And they provide support to members of their local institutional research community. So as part of the Alliance Network of Experts, the Dataverse North Expert Group coordinates working groups that work collaboratively on developing shared resources for this community. So things like training and policy guidelines and things like that, and metadata. And recently, a new Borealis community facilitation team was formed to support the growing community of Borealis Dataverse collection administrators. And this includes representation from the Borealis team and also Dataverse North. And this team leads those monthly community meetings and facilitates the listserv with, I think, has over 120 members at this point. So given this rapid growth of the Canadian Dataverse administrator community, we really saw that there was a strong need to better understand the demographics of the admins, what are their needs, what are the challenges that they face, and things like that. So the community-led initiative was to form a working group under Dataverse North to develop a national survey with the goal to answer these questions and better understand this group. So I'll turn it over to Danica now.
Thanks, Megan. Yes, so as we all know, many of us on the call are participants. Canada's data community is a very active one, and the Borealis user group reflects this. This group ranges from smaller institutions to community colleges to large research universities, and we're all working with the same software and infrastructure of Dataverse. So our collaborative working group for the research reflects the need to develop a survey that is informed by our community, comprised of community members, as well as the stakeholder groups that Megan mentioned. Because this is Scholar Portal Days, we wanted to highlight the importance of undertaking administrative research, but as a consortium. So we could have imagined a scenario where Borealis did some administrative research on the platform on their own, but because it's being undertaken as a collaborative, it ensures that insights and additions from a diversity of perspectives let us reflect and renew together, united as a group. Next slide, Megan. So in order to approach the survey, we have two goals. One is to develop a better understanding of who Canadian Dataverse administrators are. This could include institutional context, demographics, service models, experiences using the software, and also perceptions of the kind of community as a whole. And also to collect information to plan initiatives and resources for the Dataverse administrators as well. Okay, next slide. So in terms of the survey design, we can see that this reflects that. We're looking at administering the Dataverse collection, policies and procedures that might apply to the Dataverse collection, different software features that we would like to see or that are currently in practice, RDM services that the institution provides, so how the Dataverse initiative kind of connects to the other broader service offerings, and then also perceptions of the national community. Next slide. So I think this is you, Megan. Sorry.
That's okay. Yeah, so we administered the survey in April, asking for 1 response per institution. And we're pleased to report we had responses from 45 institutions, which is 66% of the potential Canadian institutions who administer a Dataverse collection or repository. And we also had good representation from each of the 4 regional academic library consortia across Canada, from 57% up to 79%. So we're really excited about that response rate. Today we can share with you a sneak peek of some of the preliminary results. This is really hot off the presses because the survey ended on Friday, so it's 1 weekend. So this very, very fresh, and just a sneak peek as well. So one of the questions that we asked institutions was to predict whether they thought the rate of new deposits would decrease, remain the same, or increase over the next 2 years. So in the figure here, you can see the majority, 89% of the respondents indicated they expected there would be an increase in the rate of new deposits, with only 4% indicating about the same rate and 7% were not sure. So it will be interesting to investigate the responses to look at staffing levels, considering this, these expectations, and also the broader RDM landscape that might be driving some of the increased rate in deposits as well. We also asked the institutions to select the challenges that they have faced in administering their institutional Dataverse collection. So in this chart, you can see the top challenge faced is actually researcher awareness, with 91% of the institutions selecting this challenge. The next highest was lack of incentives or rewards for deposit and sharing, with 64% selecting this one. And the third was developing institutional guidelines and policies, with 53%. These are really interesting challenges, many of which we can actually tackle collaboratively. So as next steps, we're really going to be digging into the data and the long text responses as well to better understand these trends and experiences. And now I'll turn it back over to Danica.
Thanks, Megan. So yeah, just talking about some of the lessons that we learned, I think there are a couple of things that we did that others across the network can potentially benefit from. Community research design was a large part of this project. The group has a very diverse set of experiences, and it was challenging to design questions that would be understandable by all of our community members. So we did do several testing sessions with different users to ensure that the survey would land with them. There's also a rich nuance and institutional variation in RDM service provision, which makes it difficult to capture accurately via quantitative questions only. So we definitely made sure that we included qualitative questions as well. Strategic focus was difficult but important. this survey could have been very, very broad. We tried our best to narrow it down as best as we can to ensure that we're not getting overwhelmed by the survey results, and ensure that we're strategic about making it actionable and direct. And then finally, it's a collaboration between the infrastructure provider and community groups, making it essential to cultivate a sustainable national grassroots community. Next slide, Megan. Another lessons learned that we just wanted to share is that the survey was designed to be repeated periodically, so it can be an ongoing check-in to monitor the needs of the national community. This allows the institution, network, and more to make data-informed decisions. It's an ongoing way to kind of adjust. The field is constantly evolving, so our services should too as well. We also walked the talk that we ask of researchers and completed an ethics process to ensure that we could share de-identified data from this survey in Borealis. This data can benefit everyone for benchmarking, and then the shared data also contributes to our dataverse community internationally who might be able to use or reuse the data set. So just wanted to put a little pitch in here to anyone that Dataverse is available to you as well, to consider sharing your data from the research that you're doing as well at your institutions. And this benefits us as service providers, our network, other researchers, and our larger community. And back to you, Megan.
Great. So just in terms of next steps, we actually have a second survey that will be administered later this month. And this is to investigate more closely the individual experiences and perceptions of this community. So we're really looking forward to delving into that aspect as well. And after analyzing the results over the next few months, we're planning several academic outputs, including conference presentations, papers, and as Danica mentioned, sharing the de-identified data set in Borealis. We're also planning to channel the feedback into community initiatives to target engagement and training, as well as specific software improvements if that is revealed in our analysis. And as Danica mentioned, we would like to administer this survey on an ongoing basis so we can track the responses and adapt to the changes in the needs of this community. We would like to acknowledge our fabulous working group members who couldn't present with us today, but who have contributed so much time and effort in this process. And we'd also like to thank the Alliance for translation support of all survey materials, so we really could make this a bilingual survey approach. And just a special thank you to our community members as well for participating in validation testing and participating in the surveys as well. So we look forward to your questions and comments today, but you can always reach out to either of us if you have any other questions or any follow-up. So thank you so much for having us.
Great. Thank you, Megan and Danica. We certainly appreciate you sharing your expertise. And it's really great to hear about this kind of ongoing surveying that you're going to be doing that will give you those benchmarks that you can work from and really kind of create those evidence-based decision-making for the future of this work. We have a little bit of time for some Q&A, but I am certainly happy to get the ball rolling. You mentioned that survey just closed on Friday, so this question might not be answerable at this point, which is totally understandable. But I noticed that data point around researcher awareness, and was just curious if you had given some thought yet to like some potential solutions or things that might help to increase that researcher awareness.
That's a really excellent question. And I think that's one of the things when we saw that came up as sort of one of the top challenges, it's sort of something that we can definitely tackle together as a community. We've been thinking about different ways that we can promote the Borealis service, perhaps even reaching out to researcher events like conferences and things like that, and providing hands-on training to learn, like demystify the process of depositing a data set, perhaps. Those are some of the things that we could do, especially thinking about like targeting different disciplinary groups that might need a little bit more encouragement to share, perhaps. So those are the things we'll be investigating as we kind of unpack the analysis a bit more and start planning those engagement activities. Danica, do you have anything else to add about that? I know it's really early days for our analysis,
but also I guess that like the work of the network is also bolstered by the work of each individual university, and this is like kind of a thing that is increasingly researchers are becoming aware of with the new research data management policy. The NIH is also asking researchers to share data as part of their grant obligations. So I think we're seeing kind of an emerging conversation, and hopefully the study can kind of support the need for that outreach.
Great, thank you for those initial thoughts. I know I'm sure that was a quick turnaround from Friday's survey results, so very much appreciate your insights there. Okay, so I will move us over to our fourth lightning talk this morning. Thank you again, Megan and Danica, very much appreciate your time. And next up, we have the lightning talk, Embracing Shared Community-Led Presentation Infrastructure at the University of Alberta. And we are joined by Kenton Good this morning from the University of Alberta.
Hello, can I just first confirm that you can hear me and everything looks fine?
You are great.
All right, sounds good. Thanks so much for inviting me to this wonderful event. It's been great to hear all the great work and projects coming out of the Scholars Portal community. And I'm thoroughly now convinced that what we need in front of every library meeting is a pet parade to start that meeting. So today I'm going to talk a little bit about our own journey to reframe, refresh, renew our digital preservation infrastructure. Julie mentioned yesterday that we are relatively new subscribers to both the OLRC and the Permafrost service, and thought it'd be interesting just to share a little bit about our journey. So first of all, who I am, I'm the head of digital production and preservation services for the University of Alberta. I've been in this position since April 2020. Prior to that, I was the digital infrastructure librarian, where I managed a fairly large team of IT professionals that looked after the technical and operational aspects of our digital library infrastructure and systems. So the University of Alberta has had a fairly long track record of hosting local on-premise preservation infrastructure. We actually set up our own version of OLRC. We don't call it that, but it's the same technology, the OpenStack Swift storage technology. We set that up in 2013 and have been running that as our primary preservation storage since that time. We have a long-standing in-house developed repository, and within that, we've really integrated our preservation workflow to create our preservation packages and tools and systems for migrating that material to our preservation storage. And we have a very long history of digitization and packaging that material for preservation. Just as an aside, right, we also host many other pieces of infrastructure for other preservation projects, a clocks node, 5 locks network nodes, and we host a fairly substantial amount of infrastructure for the Canadiana project. So you might be wondering, okay, why are we changing all that? There were lots of changes at University of Alberta over the last number of years. A really big driver is the funding cuts coming out of the provincial budget for higher education in this province, which resulted in fairly historic budget cuts over 3 budget cycles, which really changed the game for us. Following that, the University of Alberta initiated a fairly top-to-down restructuring process on campus, looking at a whole variety of areas, finance, HR, communications, and as part of that, IT consolidation was certainly looked at and implemented. So this greatly impacted the way that we'll manage our information technology and especially infrastructure moving forward. So out of this, we have reduced budgets, reduced staffing, and certainly a changed and likely reduced ability to roll out on-premise IT infrastructure moving forward. So all of this really gave us a moment of reflection in terms of where do we go? What's the sustainable path for our digital preservation infrastructure given these changing conditions? So our path forward was to look at both the OLRC and most recently permafrost. We signed up for OLRC in August 2022, and I think we were the first non-OCUL user of the permafrost service signing up in January 2023. So I actually went back and found my notes that I made when I was starting to make the case for getting particularly into the OLRC infrastructure. And I thought it'd be interesting just to highlight a few of the sort of talking points that had led us to this decision. The first was really a deep desire to participate in a community-led project. I think it's kind of obvious, but digital preservation problems are really too large to solve for any one library. The solutions for them are going to happen at the regional or national levels. We certainly were interested in being part of a larger community of practice and support network. When you run this stuff alone, you are truly alone with this kind of work. So it's been very nice to so far participate in that with Scholars Portal. We certainly did not want to be locked into any one commercial vendor solution, and the solution we wanted to pick, we wanted something that would share our values, particularly around the topic of digital preservation. One of the limitations of our own on-premise infrastructure was the lack of geographic distribution. We had things in 3 data centers, but they were only about 5 kilometers apart. So the OLRC service with the 5 very distributed data centers was very appealing. And likewise, just the ability to scale up capacity without significant infrastructure time investment was also another appealing feature. I did do a fairly comprehensive cost analysis of what it took to run our own local instance versus what Scholars Portal would charge us, and certainly moving towards the Scholars Portal option was the more cost-effective option for us. Also moving in this direction really allowed us to reduce our overall carbon footprint for preservation infrastructure. It took a lot of power, in particular to run all those bare metal servers within our storage cluster. And now we're going to be able to decommission all that. And mostly, I just want to emphasize that this really allows us now to focus on preservation problems instead of IT problems. I'm no longer, refereeing debates on how we deploy Ruby on Rails applications, and now I'm focused on policy and procedures and workflows around digital preservation, and that's going to put us in a much better spot moving forward. So our progress to date, OLRC was the one we have gotten into first. So our plan is to use OLRC as our primary preservation storage pool, with then plans to replicate that data in additional storage pools. We're hoping that some of the functionality within DuraCloud will help facilitate that. Still working on what those secondary storage pools might look like. So we're currently migrating the contents of what was our local preservation storage to OLRC. It's about 25 terabytes roughly. One of the things we wanted to do is make sure we do it right. So we're very careful with our copying and our auditing of that work, so we can safely decommission our infrastructure on the backside. And because we have a tiny window of opportunity before we have to decommission our existing infrastructure, we're really examining all our preservation packages and looking at ways we could possibly enhance them before we copy them to OLRC. Many of these were created in 2003 for kind of vintage, and there's elements that are missing, particularly on the metadata side, that we now want to see if we can include. On the permafrost side, we are just starting that adventure now. We've struck a working group locally, and we've picked a initial use case, which is some archival digitization around our sound steel collection that we're going to use to sort of test our workflows with permafrost. Beyond that, we certainly are interested in various integrations with some of our repositories. One of the interesting ones for us is we subscribe to a SaaS audiovisual platform service called Aviary. Aviary as a vendor has a Preservica integration. They don't yet have an Archimedic integration, and wondering whether we could play a role in helping facilitate that work. So I think that's all I wanted to highlight. So far, it's been a wonderful experience for us, and I very much look forward to connecting with others in this community doing this kind of work. My email was in the earlier slides, so feel free to reach out to us.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, Kenton. It's really great to hear from somebody outside of Ontario on top of it. And really hope things keep moving and progressing forward with your incredible work out at the University of Alberta. I'm just opening up our Q&A module and see some folks applauding and saying thank you very much for sharing of your journey, Kenton. It's really interesting. You mentioned that auditing process and how careful and deliberate it needs to be. And I'm just curious if you can speak to the details a little bit about that auditing process. Is this something that's really collaborative across your team? Is it handled by 1 or 2 staff members? How does that kind of safety mechanism come into play?
Yeah, no, it's handled by several staff members. Our senior digital preservation specialist is taking the lead on that work. I've been lucky to find a student in our library school who I've been able to hire on a casual contract, who's exceptionally careful and has got a real eye for this kind of work. And he's been obviously helping with some of the legwork with that copying, but it's mostly obviously checking checksums and other things just to make sure we've fully captured that content.
Students, again, they're an incredibly valuable and group of folks, and so contribute so much.
I don't think libraries can function without our student workers.
Truly. Well, thank you, Kenton. Again, folks, feel free to enter any questions you might have in the chat, even though I'm going to move us on to our final lightning talk of the morning to try and keep us on schedule to some point. I really want to thank Kenton for your time this morning. And I will introduce our final lightning talk of Scholars Portal Day 2023, which is called Reflecting on 1 Year of a Laurier Library PDF Pit Stop, a Community Asks About a National Remediation Strategy. And this presentation is being led by Mark Weiler, Ashley Shaw, and Dr. C.N. Wilson from Wilfrid Laurier University, Art Kavula from Scholars Portal, Annetta Quack from the University of Toronto, and Nancy Waite from McMaster. It's over to you.
Okay, great. So just to note, for people to note, our slides have transitions have clicks and slides have text that largely reflects speech. Just want to test that click. Could you hear that click? Okay, great, thank you. So this image of a quiet racetrack in the evening prompts reflection. The issues we share are not unique to Laurier. They affect every library and every library consortium. And this is not a criticism of individuals in difficult roles and challenging environments. This is a group joining the larger chorus calling for provincial and national library communities to hear user experiences and renew our commitment to build better libraries for users here today and arriving tomorrow. So while the Laurier Library's web accessibility advisor, Ashley Shaw, who is blind, drew our attention to problems in front of her. Like this image of a broken tire, journal articles were broken. No headings, split words, bad tables. And to respond to this problem, we imagined a PDF pit stop which had 3 features. 1, users can start an article remediation process within library platforms. 2, remediation includes tagging articles and verifying they are correct. 3, stakeholders like subject librarians are told about the problems so we can be part of the solution. And here today, I describe part 2. So for her master's thesis, Ashley needed to review 215 articles and dissertations, and I remediated about 130 of them. I converted with Abby, tagged in Word, exported to HTML, and verified with JAWS. And this was not a blazing fast pit stop. While most readers could have downloaded the articles in a day, Ashley had to wait several months. In the next few slides, the data are largely based on items Ashley needed, and it may have some errors because performance tracking was developed as we're going along. But maybe just say that vendors remediated 85 items. So ProQuest remediated over 4,000 pages of dissertations, Sage 550 pages of articles, and EBSCO 85 pages of articles. In terms of speed, ProQuest took about 35 days per dissertation and Sage about 45 days per article. In terms of correctness, 4% of the remediated files that ProQuest sent me, I sent back for further repair. And I also gave Ashley remediator notes about 80% of the time. For Sage, 24% of the remediator articles they sent me, I sent back for further repair, and I gave Ashley remediator notes about 42% of the time. Oops, let me go back one. So I think we're on the right track. What about Born Accessible? Well, about 99% of the 164 items, such as PDFs, HTML, and EPUBs, purchased through deals negotiated by the Ontario Council of University Libraries, and about 87% of the 122 items purchased through deals negotiated by the Canadian Research Knowledge Network needed remediation. So what effect does this have on a student and their supervisor? Ashley?
Thank you, Mark. So I am a blind researcher. I'm a master's student, and I study the interventions used to address unemployment for adults who are blind. The rate of unemployment for blind people is unacceptably high, both in Canada and around the world. And my thesis uses a scoping review methodology to identify and describe the interventions designed to address unemployment for this specific population, as these interventions are presented in scholarly literature. And so, as Mark pointed out, nearly all the sources I require for my thesis posed accessibility barriers and needed to be remediated. Without this pit stop strategy, I would not have been able to use the ideal research methods for this project. Next slide. However, the pit stop is in many ways an example of a reactive remediation strategy. It was not possible to predict how long it would take to remediate all the items. They were each unique and different lengths and had different features like tables or charts. Consequently, it was impossible for me to generate an accurate timeline for the milestones in my thesis and my master's degree completion. I bring this up because while reactive remediation does provide students and other library users with the reading materials we require, it also generates time, labor, financial, and other resource costs for the student. In a very real sense, reactive remediation strategies remove accessibility barriers to reading, but generate delays to project and degree completion. Next slide, please.
Yeah, we're there.
Oh, thank you. It is crucial that disabled researchers have equitable access to whatever literature we require, but it is especially problematic that research conducted by and about disabled people is difficult to access. Many of the journals publishing this research are disability related, yet they feature a legacy of inaccessible content, as Mark described. Born accessible materials are essential, but publishers, vendors, and libraries bear responsibility for the multitude of inaccessible journal articles that have already been published. If blind library users at your institution are not speaking up about these materials, that does not mean that your library's resources are free from problems. Useful information on the accessibility of research methods, it can also be difficult for students and their faculty supervisors to locate. And it is necessary that we call out access obstacles posed by any research methods so that they can be addressed. Disabled researchers need to be able to access the methods most appropriate to our fields, projects, and research paradigms. Our learnings from the pit stop strategy provide a rationale for more proactive approaches to remediation and to future library accessibility efforts. We need a shared understanding of the term accessible, meaning reading material that has been properly tagged, while generating accessible copies of materials upon request is still an essential accommodation, further work is needed to ensure that library resources are accessible to all members of the university community.
I think that's where I'll chime in. Thank you so much, Ashley. In terms of, I wanted to speak a little bit about sort of what this then, what the implications are as a faculty supervisor supporting a student who needs these resources ultimately. I think one of the huge impacts as an emerging scholar has been the reality that just to be able to support the recruitment, retention, and success of disabled students, I mean, that's a really big question, I think, for me, is how do we support students when these resources are lacking in our institutional libraries? Related to that is, you know, in Ashley's case, as she has said, she was engaging with the scoping review methodology, which requires the engagement with a large volume of literature. And for me, it was the realization that had I known that there were these limitations in the library, maybe I would have directed my student differently in terms of the methods that she was engaging in. But the fact that I have to go through those throes of thoughts, rather than, you know, having all of my students, including my disabled students, having access to all methodologies, including the scoping review methodology, I think is the limitation here. And I think for me, the question then comes up is what kind of an education and educational training on methods and research are we, able to provide disabled students at the graduate level? So all of these questions do come up for me. Related to that, I witnessed this with my own eyes, was sort of all of the sort of barriers that were created and obstacles that were created for addressing some of the issues, the very real issues that we were identifying, Mark, Ashley, and myself with leadership in our institutional library around how they could support. Everything from sort of, deferring or dismissing what was being said, or deferring to, we already have a working group on issues of disability that are working around some of these issues, and there's a lack of funding and resources. So all kinds of explanations. They threw sort of everything but the kitchen sink at sort of explaining away why, the supports that Ashley required were so difficult to provide. But not a lot of one, acknowledging the hard work that Ashley and Mark have been engaged in sort of facilitating and fostering this work for as long as they had, and the labor and the time intensity that took, and also the resource that they have already at the table, with Mark having particular expertise now and particular experiences, and just acknowledging sort of the absenting of supports that they were able to offer in this situation. So for me, I have to say, as an emerging scholar, there was a lot to think about in terms of, well, how do I recruit and retain disabled students if this is what they have to go through in the labor and the throes, and the time that they have to be taking away from their studies to then advocate for themselves in all of the ways that Ashley has had to advocate for herself. And although she does a brilliant job, it's work that she shouldn't have to do. And ultimately, that's where I sort of identify, the human rights issues in not being able to provide adequate supports in the ways that Ashley and other disabled students require them. And I'll pass it on.
Next slide. So in light of these issues that Mark, Ashley, and Leanne have identified, issues that exist across Canada, we would like to recommend the creation of a national remediation strategy with an alternate format repository for both books and journal articles. This strategy could work with the Canadian Association of Research Libraries and Accessible Standards Canada for a repository infrastructure, while working towards interoperability and accessibility metadata as critical features, so that it can be integrated into our discovery systems, which would ensure discoverability for those who need it. As Andrea spoke of this morning, with the Democracy's Library Initiative, silos also exist with accessibility collections. We have fabulous programs across Canada, such as ACE or the National Network of Equitable Library Service, but they have specific mandates and typically function in localized geographic regions. The repository would ensure that patrons across Canada would have access to accessible material, regardless of where it's created. We would also like to recommend content is remediated with ISO standards and include the formats of tag PDF, HTML, and EPUB 3, and ensure that content users know if a resource is just OCR'd or is fully tagged with image descriptions. The work of remediating resources can be shared across repository participants. Everyone in Canada falls under the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms and the Human Rights Act. We must ensure that content that we are providing our print-disabled patrons is comparable to content that we provide for our non-print disabled patrons and is available in the same time frame. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ashley, Cian, Mark, and Nancy, for your candor, and especially to Ashley and Cian for sharing their experiences throughout this research process. I'll certainly turn it over to anybody who might have any questions about this call for a national remediation strategy. I also have a question kind of brewing in the back of my mind, if there isn't one that comes to the forefront for folks. But really do want to express my sincere appreciation for the incredible work being done at Wilfrid Laurier in this space.
If I could just say that we are responding, and we are responding here at Laurier. So I think there's a lot of good to build on with this too, and I think we it's important that we acknowledge that there is a response, there is stuff coming forward. So I'm really hopeful that this will be part of a larger response together with as many people as possible.
That's a great point. Thank you, Mark. I know we are getting a little tight for time, so I do not want to press anybody for questions, but certainly will open the floor if anybody does have anything to put to the Q&A box. Otherwise, I'm sure Mark and the other presenters are more than happy to answer any questions you might have via email. And certainly, again, you can type them into the Q&A box and we can always answer them after the lightning talk portion of today wraps up as well. Okay. I'm going to keep my question and I'm actually going to send it over to the group after our lightning talks too. So I will turn this back over to Sabina. And again, a big thank you to all of our lightning talk presenters today. And we will move on to the next portion of Scholars Portal Day 2023. Thank you all.
Thanks, everyone, and thanks for all of the great lightning talks. I'm always consistently impressed by all of the different projects that we hear about from across all of our member libraries and libraries that we work with in different capacities. So especially excited to have representation from outside of Ontario this year. I'm going to pass it over to Amy Greenberg now, who's going to provide some updates from the OCUL side.
Updates from the OCUL side, always fun. Hold on a second, let me get my, of course, this worked very well when we were testing. There we go. Okay, sorry about that, folks. All right. Always, of course, a pleasure to attend Scholars Portal Day. Fun to be doing it from the OCUL side. Hello, everybody. My name is Amy Greenberg. I'm the Executive Director of OCUL, and I'm pleased to provide a brief update for you today. I'm going to be running through these slides. They will be made available afterwards in case I don't get a chance to cover something, because I know we are coming to the end of the day. So quickly, going, with the theme of sort of renewal and refreshing, I want to talk a little bit about the folks in the OCUL office and the folks on the executive, both of whom have some new membership as of this year. And I also want to give you a quick update about some of the broad kind of OCUL activities and things that are going on as related to the relatively new strategic priorities for OCUL. So really quick, the OCUL office team, we are at full capacity, which is amazing. And folks from OCUL, if you're here, I would just ask you to maybe say hi in the chat so people can acknowledge you. We have our team composed of Adita Alwi, Information Resources and Collection Specialist, Noor Artak, our OCUL Business Officer, Annika Irvinward, our new Assistant Director for Collaborative Initiatives, Alex Fletcher, who's the Omni Technology and Network Zone Specialist, Krista Foley, Assistant Director for Information Resources and Collections, Katrina Fortner, who just moderated our panel. She is our new Admin and Communications Coordinator, myself, and our newest team member, Ellie Ruggles, our Admin Assistant. And so we are really excited to be at full capacity and be able to help you all do your amazing OCUL work. Something that I realize is that the governance of OCUL is something that not everyone is familiar with. So I just wanted to virtually introduce the new membership of the OCUL exec. The OCUL executive membership turns over after the director's spring meeting, which just happened. The executive is a subgroup of the OCUL directors who carry out many of the sort of decisions and work of OCUL. So this is the current slate. We are still working on finding a treasurer, but we are hoping that that will happen. And these folks work very closely, of course, with the OCUL office. The official handoff is actually next week, so this is a bit of a sneak peek, but some of you may see folks from your own institutions who you recognize. We have Catherine Steves, who is our new chair from Western. Mark Asberg is the new vice chair, chair-elect from Queens. Amber Lannon is the past chair from Carleton. We have Gohar Shugian, Wilfred Laurier, who was the treasurer and is sticking around unofficially for a little bit. And we have Tracy Spurway, who's new secretary at Algoma. So welcome to all. Okay. I just wanted to kind of remind people this is information that has been shared throughout OCUL, but last year the OCUL executive kind of focused in on 3 strategic priorities from a refreshed strategic plan. This information is all available, excuse me, on the OCUL website as well. I've put the link on the slide. And the 3 strategic priorities are supporting Indigenous reconciliation, expansion of shared resources and infrastructure, and supporting hybrid and flexible learning. In my mind, the Scholars Portal team does a great job of most of these things, and especially the third learning piece. And I mention that because in a minute, when I talk about some of the OCUL initiatives, you'll see that they're really focused a little bit more on the first 2. But we're not neglecting that third one. As part of the kind of strategic plan refresh, OCUL has always had the core principles that are listed here on the slide: advancing research, advancing teaching and learning, advancing academic libraries as leaders in social change and inclusivity. That's a new one. Developing and supporting robust infrastructure and demonstrating value. So as I said, that third one was the new one. Other than that, OCUL's core principles are largely unchanged. So hopefully, these values and principles that I just read really quickly sound familiar to you. So what are some activities that sort of OCUL has been working on with an eye towards these strategic priorities? And I just have a few examples for you today. This is, by no means sort of all encompassing. But under the heading of, supporting Indigenous reconciliation, this is something that, of course, OCUL is taking really seriously. There is a new Truth and Reconciliation Committee, brand new. The terms of reference were just approved, and so there will be a call going out for membership shortly. In terms of the Omni work for our shared system for collaborative futures, there is a decolonizing descriptions implementation working group, and the objective of this group is to set up a framework for implementing decolonized vocabulary at our shared network zone level. So I think that's really exciting. You can find more details about them on Spot Docs as well. I wanted to highlight, we heard such a great update from Scholars Portal yesterday. I also just wanted to highlight some of the informal learning that I know has been happening as part on the Scholars Portal team. Folks participated in an OCAP workshop on Indigenous about Indigenous data sovereignty last year. And as a result of that workshop, there's an informal working group formed from within Scholars Portal that has some OCUL staff membership as well, who are really looking at, we've heard a lot about research data management and a lot of different perspectives throughout the last 2 days. And I just want to flag that there are folks at SP and at OCUL who are really thinking about this in terms of all the services that we help to support. And lastly, I just want to note that OCUL does have, like the Internet Archive, we have institutional membership in NICLA. And we continue learning and looking for opportunities for further engagement. All right. So then in terms of expanding our shared resources and infrastructure, I wanted to note we have a really exciting pilot project between OCUL and Wiley, thanks to the work of the OCUL IR subgroup that worked on this for evidence-based acquisition pilot for Wiley ebooks. And this will also involve a lot of really good sort of developing our shared infrastructure in terms of the network zone. And it's something that is going to, I believe 18 or 19 of our schools are participating in. So that's really exciting. It's a one-year pilot. And then based on statistics over that period, we'll have a shared collection in OCUL. The terms of reference for the new initiatives fund have just been updated, and I mention that because the new initiatives fund is kind of OCUL's way of funding shared, collective projects that will benefit the consortium as a whole. So if you are a part of a community or a committee or a working group, or really any kind of group within OCUL, you may put in a request for funding. And so that, as well as a sort of process for the coming year, will be distributed soon from the OCUL office too. So we hope that will help strengthen some of these shared initiatives that we can do as a consortium. And last but not least, I'm very happy to announce that the OCUL Outstanding Achievement Award, which some of you may remember, is back. We are reviving it. This award recognizes an individual or team within the OCUL consortium that are notable contributors to advancing the OCUL vision. Nominations will open in June and close in September. The recipient is awarded by a jury of 2 OCUL directors and 1 executive committee member, and it's usually awarded in the early months of the following year. So think about work that you or your colleagues are doing that might be eligible for this great award. And that concludes the end of my whirlwind tour of OCUL updates. Thank you all very much, and I am happy to take questions, although I feel like we probably just have like 2 minutes left.
Thank you so much, Amy. Yeah, I don't know if we have time for questions, but
okay. You can just ask me questions after.
If you want to, yeah, if you want to stick around, if you want to put your email address in the chat too, yes, or the OCUL email address, then maybe people can send questions that way.
Oh yeah, you can email me anytime.
And
I have the same email address.
Now I am going to pass it over to Lynn Service, who is one of the incoming co-chairs of the OCUL Scholars Portal Committee, to say a few words to sort of wrap up our Scholars Portal Days this year.
Hi, thank you so much. Thank you for inviting me, Sabina. So yeah, I'm Lynn Service. I work at McMaster University Libraries, and I'm one of the new co-chairs for the OCUL SP. My co-chair is Andrew Colgoni, but he could not be here today. So I just wanted to start by saying thank you to everyone for their excellent, to the speakers for their excellent insights and how their institutions are refreshing, reframing, and renewing technology, service models, and collaborations. And I would also like to thank everyone for participating as a learner and sharing your insights and engaging with questions. So my closing remarks are kind of be an oversight or an overview of what's happened in the past couple of days, and I'll try to go quickly through them without sort of omitting anyone's hard work. So on Thursday, we heard some exciting updates from Scholars Portals from Odesi, Permafrost, the Project Ramp, Emma ACE, and the Assessment Framework Project, and Racer. So Odesi has seen a lot of progress actually in the last 6 months, and it was very impressive, including the much anticipated website with its sleek design and updated features like the ability to download affiliated data links. And so this will certainly be a tool that will empower researchers in their data journey moving forward. Permafrost has seen a growth in membership extending beyond OCUL, and that includes the University of Alberta and the National Gallery. And as a result, community engagement has been a focus of Permafrost to ensure that good communication is with all its members. And this effort includes a user forum and community calls. Project Ramp, or Spot Docs, which is everyone's favorite information management and sharing page, is getting a makeover. It's currently in the discovery phase of finding a new content management strategy, which includes community consultations, and they run until May 10th, I believe. So please contribute if you can. EMMA, so EMMA stands for the Educational Materials Made Accessible, and it's a collection of a number of repositories, including ACE, and it's providing access to remediated learning materials. And this amazing tool will provide us with broader access to accessible resources that avoids duplication in efforts in remediation. The Scholars Portal Service Assessment Framework is a new framework to assess Scholars Portal services, and ACE will be its first test case, which is very exciting. So please stay tuned for a call out for some participation in a working group. And RACER, which is so near and dear to my heart, is sunsetting. RACER has been around since 2003, and millions of interlibrary loans have made their way through this very well-used system. It will come to an end in March, I believe, 2024, and a decision on the replacement has yet to be made. So more to come on this. A few highlights from Thursday's lightning talks. We learned about the reframing of virtual reference at Queen's using a snazzy product called Genially. At Western, they're working at reintroducing the library to campus, which I really loved how that was framed, which included a robust and comprehensive outreach strategy. At Carleton, they're refreshing their data service webpage, and Ottawa developed best practices for information sharing tools. A couple of big highlights from today. So we learned what Compute Ontario is, and that many of our libraries have collaborations with Compute Ontario's elaborate digital research infrastructure ecosystem. The Internet Archive presentation was on Democracy Library, which strives to inform and empower all citizens by making government documents accessible and shareable. And we also received some great recipe ideas for this coming weekend. I believe I'm still waiting for the butter tart recipe to be shared. And then finally, we learned how the Canadian Census Data Discovery Partnership is building an open bilingual Census Canada research platform that is searchable and a single point to access all things census. And a couple shout outs to my favorite pets, Chonk the lizard, and Grumpy Christmas cat Natasha really had me, and then fashionista firefighter Lima, I believe, very adorable. Thank you so much for including that. And then 4 quick points today from the lightning talks, which I really think focused quite nicely on refreshing collaboration to develop new services. So it started off with the Odesi Markit program, which looks at updating and fixing data. And this was a really great collaboration between 3 OCUL libraries. From Queen's, we heard about the launch of Borealis that has close to 13 million downloads, which is very impressive, and is a true collaboration across Canada from coast to coast to coast. And further to this collaboration, we heard another collaboration, and it's a push out to a national survey to better understand Canada's data community. And then our friends from the University of Alberta shared their moment of reflection on digital preservation infrastructure. And part of their solution is focused on community collaboration. And we are so happy to have the U of A in the Scholars Portal family. And finally, the Laurier Library PDF Pit Stop, speaks to the importance of a collaborative national effort in providing accessible material to our users. Before I sign off, I would like to give a shout out to Sabina. You are very talented, and we thank you for all your work for bringing these few days together. And also a big shout out to the Scholar Portal Days Committee members, which includes Sabina, Katrina Ginsley, Annika Karen, Andrew, and Kate. A wonderful job. Well done. And a special thank you go out to the amazing duo of Karen and Ed for the many years of service overseeing the Scholar Portal SP Committee. Or the OCUL SP Committee, Andrew and I have only chaired 2 meetings so far, but we promise to work hard to fill your shoes. Libraries are dynamic and our services and our people are equally dynamic. As we heard over the past few days, nothing is set in stone, and we hope that you are able to take some ideas back to your library to renew, refresh, and reframe your services, your service models, technologies, and collaborations. From Andrew Colgoni and myself, I would like to thank you once again for attending and participating, and we look forward to seeing you next year at Scholar Portal Days 2024. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lynn. I just want to echo thank you to everyone who attended. Thank you to all of our speakers. Thank you to everybody who contributed. Thank you very much to our closed captioners who've done an amazing job. I am just putting a link in the chat to our feedback survey, and I'll let everybody know that we'll be sharing the recordings from today and yesterday, all of the slides, as well as the additional questions in the Q&A that presenters didn't get to live. We will be sharing all of that very early next week. We have kept everyone past time, so I think it is time to sign off. Thanks everybody for a great 2 days, and we'll look forward to doing it again next year.